The rain felt like tiny needles hitting her skin, but the fear inside her chest was even colder than that. He wasn't running to catch her. He was running to push her somewhere. Her lungs were screaming for air, but she couldn't slow down, not even for 1 second. Every breath tasted like metal, like blood, like pure terror. Her feet kept slamming against the wet street over and over again. Her old sneakers could barely grip the soaked pavement beneath her. Behind her, she could hear him. Her so-called brother Daniel. His footsteps had a strange rhythm to them, almost too calm, too steady. It wasn't the sound of someone desperately chasing her. It was the sound of someone carefully steering her, like a farmer guides sheep toward a gate. "Run, Mia, just run," she kept telling herself inside her head. But run where? She had already been running for 3 whole states. 3 states of dirty motel rooms with peeling wallpaper on the walls. 3 states of looking over her shoulder every single time she walked into a coffee shop. 3 states of jumping at every little notification that popped up on her phone. The mysterious design client who wouldn't stop calling her, again and again. The packages that kept showing up at addresses she had never even lived at. The photos of her that she never remembered anyone taking. And Daniel's voice echoing in her head, brushing off every single fear she ever brought to him. "Mia, you're being paranoid," he'd say. "I'm your brother. I'm literally the only family you have left in this world." But being paranoid didn't explain the rage hiding inside his text messages. It didn't explain how he always seemed to know exactly where she was, no matter where she went. And it definitely didn't explain that creeping feeling she had, like her whole life, was slowly cracking at the edges, showing her tiny glimpses of something she couldn't quite remember. The city lights above her bled into the rain, like someone spilled a bucket of watercolors across the sky. Red, blue, gold, all blurring together into one long nightmare she couldn't wake up from. A sharp cramp hit her side like a knife, vicious and sudden. But she pushed harder anyway. Up ahead, maybe 50 feet through the downpour, she spotted it. A place called the Black Rose. The name was barely visible through the rain, but the warm golden light spilling out from its windows looked like the most beautiful thing she had ever seen in her life. It looked closed. It had that kind of vibe, the exclusive kind of place where ordinary people, soaked and scared and desperate, simply did not belong. She did not care. 30 feet, 20. She could hear Daniel getting closer now, his breath cutting through the sound of the storm like a blade. "Mia, stop running," he called out. "You know me. That was exactly the problem." She didn't, not anymore. 10 feet 5, her hands hit the heavy wooden door, slipping once on the wet brass handle before finally finding her grip. The door swung open way easier than she expected, and she crashed inside, stumbling into absolute silence. She slammed the heavy door shut behind her, her wet hands fumbling with the bolt until it slid home with a solid, final thunk. The sound echoed through the space like a gunshot. "Please," she gasped, spinning around to face the room, her voice completely wrecked and desperate. "He's going to." The words died right there in her throat, because this place was not a lounge. It was a throne room wearing a bar as a disguise. Dark wood walls, darker intentions sitting in every corner. Leather booths, the deep color of dried blood. Low amber lighting that threw long shadows into every corner where men in very expensive suits stood perfectly still, like statues posted as guards. The air smelled of aged whiskey, heavy tobacco, and something else entirely. Something dangerous and electric that made her pulse spike for reasons that had nothing to do with running. 4 men filled the room, all watching her with the same quiet stillness of hunters who had just been interrupted mid-stalk. Their suits probably cost more than her entire year of rent. Their faces looked like they had been carved from stone and hardened by years of violence. One of them had his hand inside his jacket. Everyone understood what that meant, but it was the 5th man who completely shattered what little remained of her reality. He sat in a leather chair near the back wall, one leg crossed lazily over the other, like he owned not just this room, but every room he had ever sat in. A crystal glass of amber liquid balanced perfectly in his long fingers. He didn't snap his head around the way the others had when she crashed through the door. Instead, he moved slowly, deliberately, with the kind of grace that belonged to something built for survival. He set his glass down with surgical precision. Then he rose to his full height, tall, taller than Daniel. Broader too, wearing a dark gray suit that fit his frame like it had been sewn directly onto his body. Shoulders that promised violence, arms that looked equally capable of breaking something or holding something gently, depending entirely on the moment. His dark hair was swept back from a face that could have been sculpted by someone with a personal grudge against softness. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, a straight nose that looked like it had been broken once and set back in place with obsessive care. A thin scar traced his jawline, barely visible, but somehow making him look even more devastating instead of less. And his eyes, good grief, his eyes, dark, almost completely black in the low amber light. They locked onto her with an intensity that made Daniel's obsessive behavior look like casual interest by comparison. This man looked at her the way a predator watches something it has already decided belongs to it, not with desperation, but with absolute, unshakable certainty. A dragon tattoo coiled up from beneath his collar, winding up his neck. When he swallowed, the dragon seemed to actually breathe, the scales shifting with the movement. Something deep inside her chest cracked open, not fear, recognition. "I'm sorry," she managed, hating the way her voice trembled so obviously. She was painfully aware of how she must look right now. Completely soaked through, her dark curls plastered flat against her face and neck. Her simple jeans and sweater clinging to her body uncomfortably, her chest still heaving from the run. "I didn't mean to intrude," she started. "I just needed." The bang on the door behind her cut off every single word like a blade coming down. Her whole body jerked hard. She pressed herself tight against the door, feeling the wood shudder as Daniel pounded from the other side. "Mia?" His voice filtered through, sharp with panic and fury all tangled together. "Mia, I know you're in there. Come out right now, you don't understand what you're doing." The four suited men shifted with the practiced smoothness of chess pieces being moved by an expert hand. The one with his hand already in his jacket had fully drawn his weapon now, a sleek black pistol he kept lowered but absolutely ready. But the dark-haired man, the one who commanded this entire room without speaking a single word, simply tilted his head slightly. His gaze moved from her face to the door behind her, then calmly back to her face. Something flickered behind those black eyes. Not surprise, not concern, satisfaction. He glanced at his watch. The thing probably cost more than a car. A slow smile touched his lips, not warm, not comforting, the exact kind of smile a predator gives in the half-second before it strikes. "You're 3 minutes late, Mia," he said. His voice matched absolutely everything else about him. Deep, perfectly controlled, with an undertone of danger underneath every word that made every single hair on her body stand straight up. It rolled through the room like distant thunder, the kind that tells you the real storm hasn't arrived yet. 3 minutes late. Late for what? She had never been here before. She had never seen this place before in her life. She did not know this man, but her body knew him. Her body went completely still in a way that had nothing whatsoever to do with fear. Her pulse slowed instead of racing. Her breathing deepened like a wounded animal that had finally stumbled into its den after a very long time away. She started, but he was already moving toward her. He walked with the fluid, unhurried grace of something that sat at the very top of the food chain. Every step measured and deliberate, closing the space between them until he stood close enough that she could feel the heat coming off his body. Could smell him, something dark and woody and expensive that wrapped around her like smoke. Up close, he was devastating. Maybe 35, maybe older, with the kind of presence that made you want to either run as fast as possible or simply stay very, very still. Every single line of his face spoke of control and consequences. Behind her, Daniel pounded harder. "Mia, please," his voice cracked with something that sounded almost real. "He's going to kill me. He poisoned me." He said the only way to get the antidote was to bring you here. I didn't have a choice. She froze. The words tumbled around in her mind, trying desperately to arrange themselves into something that made sense. The dark-haired man's lips curved into something that might have been amusement if it weren't so completely cold. Your brother is correct, he said softly, pitching his voice just for her ears. I did poison him, a slow-acting toxin. Painful, but not immediately fatal. I needed him motivated enough to guide you here without tipping you off about what was happening. Her blood turned to ice water in her veins. What? He was just the sheepdog, Mia. He reached up slowly. She should have flinched back, should have pulled away hard and fast, but she couldn't. His fingers touched her jaw. Warm, careful, reverent, like he was handling something precious that had already been broken once. But I am the wolf. His thumb traced her cheekbone, and a memory flashed through her mind like lightning. This same touch, this same hand, but she was laughing in the memory, and he was smiling, and there was a ring somewhere in the image. Welcome home, he whispered, and he said a name that felt like her real name, and her entire reality shattered like a glass dropped on concrete. The world tilted sideways, not the room stayed solid, anchored by expensive wood and the weight of armed men. But her reality, the careful construction she had built over 3 years as Mia Morrison, the quiet graphic designer who lived small and stayed invisible, cracked like thin ice under too much pressure. I don't know you, she whispered, but her voice betrayed her completely, wavering on every single word. Her body was a liar. Her pulse had slowed the moment his fingers touched her skin. Her breathing had gone deeper. Every cell she had recognized him, even while her mind screamed at her to run. His thumb traced the curve of her jaw with devastating gentleness. Your mind doesn't remember me, he said softly, his voice wrapping around each word like silk, stretched over steel. But your body does. Watch. He pressed 2 fingers to the pulse point at her throat. Her breath hitched. Not from fear, from an electric shock of something so familiar it lived in her bones. He counted silently, his dark eyes holding hers without blinking. And she watched something that looked almost exactly like pain flicker slowly across his face. 70, 2 beats per minute, he murmured. You should be running at least 120 after that sprint. After seeing a stranger, after being touched by someone you don't know. His fingers slid away slowly, reluctantly, like he was peeling himself away from something he had been holding onto for years. But I'm not a stranger, am I, Mia? Your body knows exactly who I am. Behind her, Daniel pounded harder on the door. The whole wooden frame shuddered against her back. Mia, please, the antidote. He said you had to come willingly, or he wouldn't give it to me. I'm dying, you have to believe me. The desperation in his voice cut right through the fog of confusion swirling inside her. Daniel, her brother, the only family she had left after their parents, died in that terrible car accident when she was 19. He had raised her after that, protected her, been everything. She turned toward the door, instinct pulling against the strange gravitational pull the man beside her seemed to exert on her without even trying. You poisoned him, she said, and her voice came out harder and steadier than she expected it to. You used my brother as bait. Yes, not a single moment of hesitation, not one trace of remorse. He stepped back, giving her space, but somehow taking all the air in the room right along with him. I needed you here. He was leverage. That's monstrous. I am many things, Mia. He moved to the bar, poured a glass of water with the kind of movements that spoke of someone who had been holding themselves under rigid control for a very long time. But I have never lied to you, not once in all the years I have known you. He held the glass out toward her. Drink, you're dehydrated. She shouldn't take it. She knew she absolutely should not trust anything from this man, who had just casually admitted to poisoning her brother. But her throat was completely raw from running and screaming and fear. Her hand reached out before her brain could stop it. Their fingers brushed as she took the glass. Another shock, another flash, his hands on her waist lifting her onto a kitchen counter. Sunlight pouring through wide windows. Laughter, the taste of coffee, and something sweeter than that. The glass nearly slipped from her hand. He caught it before it could fall, his reflexes moving faster than seemed human. He set it on the bar without breaking eye contact for even a second. "You're remembering," he said, "not a question." "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted, and the confession felt like defeat. "I don't know what's real anymore." Daniel's pounding had turned frantic and desperate from the other side of the door. "Mia, oh God, it hurts. Please, he's killing me." One of the suited men spoke in rapid, hushed tones. The man with the dark eyes responded without looking away from her, his voice sharp and commanding. The guard holstered his weapon and moved toward the door. "What are you doing?" she demanded, letting him in. His expression stayed completely flat. "You need to see the truth, all of it." The bolt slid back with a sharp metallic sound that echoed in the sudden silence. The door swung open. Daniel fell through the entrance like a puppet, whose strings had all been cut at once, collapsing onto the polished floor in a heap of rain-soaked desperation. His hands clutched his stomach, his face twisted in visible agony. Sweat poured down his temples despite the cold air around them. "Mia," he gasped, reaching for her with shaking hands. "Thank God. The antidote, please." She started moving toward him. But a hand caught her wrist, not rough, just firm enough to stop her completely cold. "Look at him, Mia." The man's voice was quiet, measured. "Really look." She did. Daniel was on his knees, trembling, tears streaming down his face. But his eyes kept darting to the man beside her with something that wasn't only pain or fear. It was calculation, recognition, and buried underneath all of it, barely concealed, pure fury. "You absolute monster," Daniel spat at him, venom dripping from every syllable. "You said if I brought her here, you'd let me go. You promised." "I promised you the antidote," the man corrected calmly, his voice as cold as winter concrete. "And I am a man of my word." He nodded to one of his men, who produced a small glass vial from his jacket pocket. Clear liquid caught the dim light. Daniel lunged for it, but the man held it just beyond reach. First, the man in the dark suit said quietly, "Tell your sister why you really brought her here." Daniel's face went completely white. "What? No, I told her." "The poison, there is no poison." The words fell like heavy stones into still water, sending ripples spreading in every direction. "I never touched you, Daniel. You were never in any danger from me. The world just stopped." "What?" Mia's voice barely worked. His gaze shifted to her, and for the very first time, she saw something that looked almost exactly like regret move through those dark eyes. "I told him I had poisoned him," he said quietly. "I showed him a vial. I described the symptoms in detail. And his guilt did the rest." His attention moved back to Daniel. "The human mind is a genuinely powerful thing. Tell her what you believed you were dying from. Tell her why you were so willing to believe me." Daniel was shaking his head back and forth, frantically. His performance of agony had been completely forgotten. No, you're lying. I felt it, the pain. Psychological," the man said simply. "Your body created the symptoms because your conscience already knew you deserved punishment." He took one slow step toward Daniel, and Daniel scrambled backward on the floor like a panicked animal. "Tell her what you did 3 years ago. Tell her why you owe me a debt written in blood." "I don't know what you're talking about," Daniel said. But his voice cracked and broke wide open on the last word. The man crouched down to Daniel's level. His movements were predatory and precise, like something that had all the time in the world and knew it. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, deadly quiet. "I gave you one chance to do this the easy way, to bring her to me and walk away clean. But you're going to make this difficult, aren't you?" He stood, brushing invisible dust from his suit. "Show her." One of his men moved to a sleek sound system built into the bar's wall and pressed a button. The speakers crackled to life, static, then breathing, then a voice she recognized and somehow did not recognize at all. Her voice, "If you are hearing this," the recording said, and the woman speaking sounded nothing like the Mia she knew herself to be. Her tone was cold, professional, completely empty of emotion. They've wiped your mind. Everything you think you know about the last 3 years is a lie that was built to keep you quiet and hidden. Your name is not Mia Morrison. You are not a graphic designer. You are something else entirely, and you stole something that could bring down the most powerful criminal empire on the East Coast. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. The voice on the recording kept going, relentless and steady. Do not trust Daniel. He is not your brother. He is your handler. He was placed by a rival crime family to watch over you after your memory was erased. Everything he has ever told you about your past, the dead parents, the car accident, growing up together, every single bit of it was fabricated and planted inside your head. Run to the man with the dragon tattoo on his neck. He is the only person you did not betray. He is your. The recording cut off abruptly. No, she whispered, then louder. No, that's not. I remember my childhood. I remember Daniel teaching me how to ride a bike. I remember. Implanted memories, the man said quietly. And there was something raw bleeding through the control in his voice now. Real pain, surfacing through the armor. There is a specialist on the payroll of the family that did this to you. Someone who works specifically in memory manipulation. You were their masterpiece. She looked at Daniel, really looked, and she saw the truth written into every single line of his face. The guilt, the fear, the simmering anger at being caught. Mia, Daniel said, and his voice was completely different now. Harder, the desperate brother act had shattered into pieces on the floor. Whatever he's telling you, it's not what you think. I was trying to protect you. From what? Her own voice didn't sound like her anymore. It sounded like the woman on the recording. Cold, sharp, dangerous from him. Daniel pointed at the man in the dark suit with a trembling finger. From his organization. Mia, they are criminals. They are killers. You stole evidence that could bring the whole operation down, and they want you dead because of it. I was hiding you. I was keeping you safe. By lying to me, she said, and the words tasted like ash in her mouth. By making me think I was someone I wasn't. Because the person you actually were is dangerous. Daniel scrambled to his feet. Desperation making him reckless and bold. You're not some romantic hero from a story. You're a thief and a killer who left a trail across multiple countries. I was saving you from yourself. The man in the dark suit moved so fast she barely registered it happening. One moment, he was standing near the bar. The next, his hand was closed around Daniel's throat, slamming him against the wall with a controlled violence that spoke of years and years of practice. You took her from me, the man said, his voice dropping to a register so low it made every single person in the room go completely still. You convinced her to wipe her own memories. You sold her the lie that she was protecting me by disappearing. And then you kept her medicated and small and ordinary for 3 years, while you sold her secrets to whoever would pay the most. I was protecting her from you, Daniel choked out, the grip tightened. I am her husband, the words hung in the air like a detonation. Her knees gave out. She caught herself against the bar, the polished wood, the only solid thing left in a world that was entirely made of lies now. You're married, she heard herself say, the words coming out strange and distant. We're married, the man said. He released Daniel, who collapsed to the floor, gasping. When the man turned to face her, all the careful control had been stripped completely away, and what was left underneath was raw and devastated, the face of a real human being underneath the monster. Everyone else saw. 4 years, he said quietly. You walked into my place to steal from me. You were 20, 3 years old. Beautiful, absolutely terrifying. You held a weapon to my head and demanded I open the safe. His lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it weren't so completely broken. I told you I would give you everything inside it if you had dinner with me first. She couldn't speak. Couldn't move. You laughed at me, he continued, taking another step toward her. You said that was the worst negotiation tactic you had ever heard in your life. And I told you I wasn't negotiating. I was proposing another step, another fracture in the carefully constructed world she had lived inside. We were married 6 months later. You wore a red dress because you said white was for people who had never made any real choices. and you had made plenty. We built something real together. You were my equal, my partner, my—" His voice cracked on the last word, and he couldn't finish it. One of his men cleared his throat uncomfortably. The others studied the floor, the ceiling, anywhere that wasn't the open wound playing out in front of them. She looked down at her own hands, these hands that supposedly spent their days doing design work on a computer. But now, noticing for the very first time, there were calluses in strange places. Scars so faint they were almost invisible. The way her fingers automatically curled into a defensive position every single time something startled her. "I need proof," she whispered. He reached into his jacket slowly, carefully, telegraphing every movement. He withdrew a phone, unlocked it, and held it out to her. The screen showed a photo of a woman with her exact face, but not her. This woman was laughing, her head thrown back, her curls wild and completely free. She wore a red dress and sat on the lap of a younger version of this man, who was smiling in a way that transformed his sharp, severe features into something almost boyish. She scrolled, more photos came, the two of them at a shooting range, the woman her, holding a firearm with expert ease and complete comfort. The two of them dressed up at what looked like a gallery opening. The two of them in bed, her face soft with sleep, his hand resting on her bare shoulder, his expression more tender than she would have believed his face was capable of producing. "Stop," she said, but she kept scrolling anyway, couldn't make herself stop. Then she found the video. Only 10 seconds long, the woman her stood in what looked like this very room. Leather pants, black top, a weapon holstered at her thigh. She was talking to someone off camera. Then the man walked into frame. She turned. Her entire face lit up like someone had switched on every light inside her all at once. He said something too quiet to hear clearly, and she launched herself at him. He caught her without any effort, lifting her completely off the floor as she wrapped her legs around him and kissed him with a fierceness that made the air in the room feel too thin to breathe. When the video ended, she was crying, tears streaming silently down her face for a life she had no memory of living. For a love she had lost without ever knowing she had found it. For a woman who had been so strong and so certain and so completely unlike the frightened, small creature she had become. "I don't remember," she choked out. "I don't remember any of it. I don't remember you. I don't remember being her." He took the phone gently from her shaking hands. "I know," he said, "but I remember enough for both of us." He cupped her face in both hands, his touch reverent and careful. "And I will spend every single day of the rest of our lives helping you remember, or building entirely new memories, whichever you need." Why? The question barely made it out of her throat. Why go through all of this? Why the elaborate plan with Daniel? Why not just tell me the truth? His smile was bitter. "Because you wouldn't have believed me, you would have run, and there are people actively hunting you right now, Mia. People who will not stop until one of us is in the ground." His thumbs wiped her tears away with infinite care. "I needed you here, where I can protect you, by claiming me," she said, remembering his earlier words. "Like property, yes, no apology in it, no hesitation. It's the only way to keep you alive." Behind them, Daniel struggled to his feet. "She doesn't want this, can't you see? She's terrified of you." He didn't even glance at Daniel. "Remove him." Gently, 2 men moved to flank Daniel. He fought immediately, screaming threats and curses and desperate pleas. But they hauled him toward the door with the practiced efficiency of people who had done this many times before. "You can't keep her here like a prisoner," Daniel screamed as they dragged him. "I'll go to the police." "You will do nothing," the man said coldly, "because if you breathe a single word of any of this to anyone, I will release everything I have on what you actually did. And then the people you sold her to will finish you themselves for your failure. Go live somewhere. Be grateful I'm letting you walk out of here at all." The door slammed shut, cutting off the sound of Daniel's protests. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. She was alone with him now, her alleged husband, a man she didn't remember, whose touch somehow made her entire body hum with something she couldn't name. "What happens now?" she asked. He studied her for a long, long moment. She watched emotions move across his face too quickly to catch all of them. Want, longing, restraint, something that looked very much like fear. Now, he said finally, I take you home. The elevator moved with the kind of smooth, silent efficiency that only came with obscene amounts of money. Glass walls showed a dizzying view of the entire city, spreading out below them. Millions of lights blinking against the darkness like scattered stars that had fallen and were trying to find their way back up. She pressed herself against the far wall, as much distance from him as the confined space would allow. But she could still feel him even across that small distance, the heat from his body, the weight of his gaze. Before they left the bar, he had draped his suit jacket over her shoulders. It smelled like him. That dark woody cologne mixed with something that was uniquely just him, something underneath the expensive scent. She shouldn't have found it comforting, but her body, that absolute traitor, relaxed beneath the weight of the fabric without asking her permission first. You live in the sky, she said, just to break the silence pressing down on them. I live where people cannot reach me without an invitation, he replied, standing with his hands in his pockets, that careful stillness radiating from him like heat from pavement in summer. After you disappeared, I stopped sleeping on lower floors. Couldn't tolerate feeling that exposed. The elevator slowed and the doors slid open onto a private entrance. Slate tile, soft recessed lighting. A single piece of artwork on the wall that looked like someone had painted violence in crimson and gold and called it beautiful. He gestured for her to walk through first, a courtesy that felt strange coming from someone who had just orchestrated her entire psychological kidnapping. The main space beyond was a study in controlled luxury. Floor, the ceiling windows wrapped all the way around, giving views of the city in every direction. The furniture was minimal, but clearly cost more than most people's homes. Leather, steel, dark wood. Everything precise, everything exactly in its place. A fortress that had learned to wear the disguise of a home. And everywhere, woven subtly into the design, were traces of her, of the woman she had been, a telescope pointed toward the eastern sky. She knew, somehow just knew, it had been positioned to catch the sunrise. Records lined an entire wall, hundreds of them, organized in some system her fingers immediately itched to touch and understand. A sketch pad sat open on the coffee table. When she moved closer, she saw charcoal drawings inside, city skylines, pairs of hands, the dragon tattoo that wound up the man's neck, rendered in obsessive, painstaking detail. You drew that, he said from behind her, 3 weeks before you left. You said you wanted to capture the way the scales seemed to breathe when I swallowed. She picked up the sketch with shaking hands. The style was familiar in a way that made her head ache with the effort of remembering. I don't remember drawing it. You were trained in observation. It made you exceptional at what you did. He moved to the bar, because apparently every room he occupied contained one, and poured 2 glasses of something amber. But you also drew for pleasure. You said it quieted your mind. He offered her a glass. She took it, their fingers carefully not quite touching this time. She was learning to avoid that contact, that electric shock of recognition that didn't belong to her. The liquor burned going down, but it was smooth, expensive. It warmed her chest and loosened the knot of fear that had been living there since she stumbled into that bar. Why did I leave? The question escaped before she could stop it. If we were happy, if I loved you, why would I erase all of it and disappear? Something dark crossed his face. Pain, yes, but underneath the pain there was guilt too. He drained his glass in one long swallow and set it down with careful precision. You were trying to protect me. From what? From the truth about my father. He moved to the windows, his back to her, his shoulders rigid beneath the white fabric of his shirt. The dragon tattoo peeked above his collar. You stole evidence that proved he was working against his own people. He was selling information to rival families, stealing money, planning to have me killed so he could maintain control of everything. Her chest tightened, and you didn't know, I suspected, but I didn't want to believe it. He turned and the city lights carved shadows across his face. making him look like something sculpted from darkness itself. You found proof undeniable, and you knew exactly what that proof would force me to do. Kill him, she whispered. Yes, no emotion in the single word, just cold fact. The rules inside his world were absolute. Betrayal was punishable by death. Even if the traitor was your own blood, especially if it was your own blood, to maintain power he would have had to execute his own father himself. I sat down on the leather sofa before my legs could betray me completely, so I took the evidence and ran. You took the evidence and made a deal with Daniel. He moved closer, but stopped a respectful distance away. He convinced you that if you disappeared, if you completely erased yourself and started over as someone else, the evidence would disappear with you. His people would have no choice but to let the whole thing quietly fade away. His father would face embarrassment, but not death. And you wouldn't have to be the one responsible, but that's not what happened. His laugh was bitter and hollow. No, Daniel was playing both sides the entire time. He took your money, arranged the whole memory procedure, and then sold your evidence to the rival family you'd been trying to protect everyone from. They used it to blackmail his father into even deeper betrayals. It got worse, sloppier, until there was no choice left but to act. Your father is dead. The words came out flat, empty. I dealt with it 6 months after you disappeared. Not because I wanted to, but because if I didn't, my own people would have questioned my loyalty, would have torn apart everything we had built together. She drank more of the liquor, needing the burn. I'm sorry, don't be. He finally sat in the chair across from her, maintaining careful distance. You were trying to save me from having to make that choice. You loved me enough to erase yourself completely, to become someone ordinary and safe and very far away from all the violence. His hands clenched into tight fists on his knees. But it didn't work, because I spent 3 years finding you, tracking every version of your name across the country, watching, waiting until I was absolutely certain. The headaches, she said suddenly. I've been having them for months. Migraines that felt like my skull was splitting open. The memory procedure isn't permanent, he said. The brain fights to rebuild what was taken from it. Your mind was fighting to remember. He leaned forward. That's why Daniel kept you moving. New city every 6 months. Minimal contact with other people. He was trying to prevent anything from triggering your real memories. But something changed. You started having the dreams, not a question. She nodded slowly. Dreams of hands she didn't recognize. A dragon that moved like it was breathing, a voice she couldn't place. Your own mind was stronger than what was done to it, he said. And something that looked very much like hope moved through his expression. You were coming back to me. Daniel knew it. That's why he agreed to my plans so easily. He knew he was losing control of the situation. She set down the glass, her hands too unsteady to hold it anymore. You said, there's a price on my head. Why, if the evidence is already out there, if your father is already gone, what do I have that's worth killing for? His expression went carefully, deliberately blank. You have the original files, the unedited version. And inside those files is proof that the rival family was actively working with my father during his betrayal. Evidence that could bring down not just them, but 3 other major families operating on the coast. I don't remember where any of it is. I know that, but they don't believe it. My people have authorized 7 different contractors to bring you in. Dead or alive, though they strongly prefer alive, so they can find the location before they finish the job. He stood, moving to the windows again. I understood now that the windows were his thinking space, the place he went when he needed to hold himself together. The rules inside my world state that any person claimed as personal property by a senior member cannot be touched without declaring open war against that member's entire organization. By claiming you, I've made you untouchable, as long as I'm yours. Yes, I laughed, and it came out jagged and wrong. So I traded one cage for another. He turned sharply. You think this is a cage? What else would you call it? You said I can't leave, that I'm your property. That sounds exactly like a cage to me. It's a fortress, he said, his voice going hard. "It's the only thing standing between you and a bullet right now. I'm sorry if you find protection insulting. Protection would be giving me a new identity and helping me disappear again. And how long would that last exactly?" He crossed the room in 3 long strides, and suddenly he was very close, looming over her with barely contained fury. 6 months, a year, until the next contractor tracks you down, until someone less patient than me decides a clean shot is simpler than an extraction. She held her ground even though her heart was hammering. "So I'm just supposed to accept this? Play house with a man I don't remember while everyone outside is waiting for a chance. You're supposed to stay alive." His voice dropped to something primal and dangerous and completely honest. "You're supposed to let me keep you safe until we find where you hid the evidence. And then, when this is over, when the threat is neutralized, you can decide what you want. If you want to remember, or if you want me to let you go, you would actually do that, let me go." Something cracked in his expression. The armor fractured, and underneath it was devastation, raw and real. "If that's what you chose," he said quietly, "if being here, being with me, made you miserable, I would let you walk away, but I would spend every day of the rest of my life making certain no one ever touched you. Even if I couldn't be the one beside you." The rawness in his voice did something to her chest, tightened it, made it impossible to breathe normally. "I don't know what I want," she admitted. "I don't know who I am." "You're Mia Morrison, and you're the woman you used to be," he said. "You're the woman who wore red to her own wedding, and the woman who hides in coffee shops, sketching strangers. You're all of it at the same time." He reached up slowly, making sure she could see every movement, and touched her face. "This time she didn't flinch away. "And you are my wife, even if you don't remember it, even if you never remember it." His thumb traced her lower lip, and something warm lit up low in her belly. Her body knew him, wanted him. Even as her mind was screaming warnings at her. "I need to shower," she said, because she needed space. Needed air, needed to think without his presence filling up every single corner of her awareness. "I need to change." He dropped his hand immediately and stepped back. "Second door on the left. Your clothes are still in the closet." "I couldn't." He stopped, started again. "I left everything exactly as you had it." She moved past him, feeling the pull even as she deliberately put distance between them. But at the hallway entrance, she stopped. She turned back. He was watching her, the city lights behind him making a frame of shadow and light around his silhouette. "Thank you," she said, "for not lying to me, for telling me the truth even when it hurt." His smile was small. "Sad, I told you. I have never lied to you, not once in all the years I have known you." She nodded and walked down the hallway. The bedroom was a complete revelation. Where the rest of the penthouse was masculine and spare, this room was softer somehow. A massive bed dominated the space, dressed in dark gray sheets. But the walls held more charcoal drawings, dozens of them mounted and carefully framed, faces of strangers. City skylines and him, so many images of him, sleeping, working, smiling. She moved toward one slowly. It showed him sitting at a desk, shirt sleeves rolled up, the ink of his tattoos visible all the way up his forearms. The detail was extraordinary, every line of ink, every shadow captured with obsessive, loving care. This was love, she realized. This was what it looked like when someone mattered so much you needed to memorize every single inch of them on paper just in case. The clause, it was a walk-in that could have been its own small apartment. And true to his word, one entire side was filled with women's clothing. Her clothing, leather pants and silk blouses, and heavy boots and designer heels, the full contradiction of who she had apparently been. Elegant and deadly existing right next to each other, she chose simple leggings and an oversized sweater, something that felt more like the Mia she knew herself to be. The shower was marble and chrome with water pressure that felt like actual heaven working its way into her aching muscles. She stood under the spray until all the rain and sweat and fear washed away, leaving only exhaustion in their place. When she came out, towel, dried and wearing the borrowed clothes that somehow fit her perfectly. She found him in the kitchen. He had changed too, black pants and a fitted black shirt that showed the full scope of the tattoos covering both arms. Dragons and other creatures and symbols she didn't understand. Art and violence written permanently on his skin. He was cooking, actually cooking. The smell of garlic and ginger filled the entire space. "You cook," she said, surprised. "You taught me," he replied, not looking up from the pan. "You said that if I was going to run a criminal empire, I needed to know how to take care of myself." Relying on others for basic needs was a weakness. She leaned against the counter and watched him move with the same precise grace he applied to absolutely everything. "What are you making?" "Your favorite stew," he said, "or at least it used to be." He glanced at her then, something vulnerable showing briefly in his eyes. "I don't know if your tastes changed. I don't know either." They ate at the kitchen island in silence. The stew warmed her from the inside out. It tasted like comfort, like home, and she hated that her body recognized it clearly when her mind drew nothing but blank. "I've prepared the bedroom for you," he said as they finished, "but there's also a guest room if you'd prefer to have your own space." "Where will you sleep?" "Wherever you're not, I won't," he said carefully. "I won't touch you without permission. I know you don't remember me. I know this whole situation is impossible. I won't make it worse by pushing for something you don't want." The consideration in his words made something ache inside her. "Thank you." He nodded and started clearing the dishes. She helped without being asked, and they moved around each other in that kitchen with a synchronicity that felt practiced. Familiar, like two people who had done this particular dance 1,000 times before and never fully forgot the steps. When everything was clean, when there were no more distractions left to hide behind, they stood in the living room facing each other. The whole city sprawled below them, completely indifferent to the impossible drama unfolding inside this glass tower. "Good night, Mia," he said softly. "Good night." She retreated to the bedroom and closed the door behind her. But she didn't lock it, couldn't quite bring herself to do that. She lay down in the massive bed that smelled faintly of him and stared up at the ceiling while her mind spun with everything, fear and confusion and curiosity, and underneath all of it that deep, steady pull toward the man sleeping somewhere else in this penthouse, a pull that felt less like attraction and more like gravity, like coming home after being lost for a very long time. She touched her lower lip where his thumb had traced across it. Who had she been, and who was she becoming? Those questions followed her into restless, shifting sleep, where she dreamed of dragons and old music and hands that knew exactly how to hold her. She woke to silence and sunlight pouring through the floor, the ceiling windows she didn't remember falling asleep facing. For one disorienting moment, she thought she was back in her tiny studio apartment in Chicago. The one with the water stain on the ceiling and the radiator that clanked at 3 in the morning. Then she registered the quality of the sheets beneath her, the weight of the duvet, the faint trace of expensive cologne lingering in the air. His penthouse, her cage, her fortress. She sat up slowly, her body aching in places she hadn't known could ache from a simple sprint through rain. But it hadn't been simple, had it? She'd been running from her brother who wasn't her brother, running toward a husband she didn't remember. The bedroom door was cracked open. She hadn't left it that way. Through the gap she could smell coffee, dark roast, the kind that tasted like burnt silk. And something sweet, pastries maybe. She found clothes laid out on the chair near the window, not the leather and silk from the closet. Simple jeans and a soft gray top. A note rested on top, written in sharp, precise handwriting. These might feel more familiar. "I'll be in the office. Help yourself to breakfast." The consideration in the gesture made something uncomfortable twist in her chest. He was trying, giving her space while still taking care of her. It would be so much easier if he were a straightforward monster, if he had locked this door and demanded submission. But this careful courtesy, this respect he was showing her despite everything he had claimed about ownership, was more dangerous than any lock. She dressed and walked out into the living area. The coffee was still hot inside an expensive machine, She had no idea how to work. But next to it sat a simple French press, already prepared and still steeping. He had thought of that. He had known that whatever skills the woman she used to be had possessed, operating luxury appliances probably wasn't one of the ones that had survived. Pastries sat under a glass dome. Her stomach growled, reminding her how little she had eaten in the past day. She poured coffee, selected a kvass, and began exploring. The penthouse in daylight was different. Less fortress, more gallery. Art covered every wall. Some pieces she recognized as famous, others she didn't, but suspected were equally valuable. And everywhere, woven into the collection with the same level of care, were her charcoal drawings, her pieces, framed with the same respect as the $1,000,000 paintings around them. She had been genuinely good. Really good. The sketches captured not just what things looked like, but what they felt like. A study of hands showed not just anatomy, but emotion, tension, tenderness, the threat of violence underneath stillness. She found herself drawn toward a hallway she hadn't explored the night before. At the end stood a door that was different from the others. Heavier, with a lock that looked complex. She shouldn't. She knew she absolutely shouldn't. He had given her space. Freedom within this gilded cage. Violating his privacy would be wrong, but her hands were already moving. And that right there should have been her first clue about who she actually was. She crouched in front of the lock and studied it. A standard pin tumbler, nothing particularly fancy. She needed something thin, something to create tension. She went to the kitchen, opened a drawer that seemed like it might hold useful things, and there, almost like they had been left specifically for her, were exactly the tools she needed. Her hands knew what to do. Her fingers moved with a muscle memory she didn't consciously possess, working the pins with practiced ease. The lock gave in under 30 seconds. She sat back on her heels and stared at her own hands like they belonged to a stranger. Because they did. They belonged to the woman she used to be. The door swung open silently, and she stepped into a room that stopped her breath completely. It was a shrine, but not the unsettling kind with photos plastered across every surface and obsessive scrawled notes. This was a carefully curated collection of her actual life. Records lined shelves from floor to ceiling. Hundreds of them organized in some system she would need to examine carefully to decode. A record player sat on a table near the window, expensive and vintage. But it was the walls that undid her completely. They were covered in drawings, not just displayed, but covering every single inch of available space. City scenes and portraits and abstract shapes that looked like feelings, made visible. And in the corner, a proper drafting table with fresh charcoal and clean paper, arranged as though simply waiting for her to come back. Waiting for her to remember, she moved through the space slowly, touching nothing but cataloging everything. The records were mostly jazz. Underground artists she had never heard of mixed in with legends she recognized vaguely. A journal sat on the table, and when she opened it, she found entries in handwriting she didn't recognize but somehow knew was hers. April 3rd, he said the business could wait until after my show. I told him that work doesn't stop for art. He said I was wrong, that art was the only work that actually mattered. He is so ridiculously dramatic. I love him so much it actually terrifies me. Her hands shook as she turned the pages, more entries. Fragments of a life she had lived and then lost completely. June 18th. The job in Tokyo went wrong. I had to improvise. He was furious until I showed him what we walked away with. Then he was furious about the risks I'd taken instead. We fought the usual, September 2nd. I found something I wasn't supposed to find. Evidence in his father's office. I don't know what to do with it. If I tell him, it will destroy him. If I don't, it will destroy everything we've built. The entries stopped after that exact date. 2 days later, according to what he had told her, she disappeared. A sound behind her made her spin. He stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. He had changed into a suit perfectly tailored and looked every single inch the man everyone feared. But his eyes were soft, careful. He said quietly, I heard the lock give. You still remember how to pick them. I didn't know I did, she admitted. My hands just moved. He stepped into the room, and she should have felt cornered. But she didn't. He moved to the record player, his fingers trailing over the albums with something close to reverence. You collected these for years before we ever met, he said. You said jazz was the only music that truly understood that beauty and violence could exist together in the same space. He selected a record and slid it from its sleeve with practiced care. This one was your favorite. He placed it on the turntable and set the needle down with gentle precision. The speakers crackled, and then music filled the room, piano, melancholy, and complex. A woman's voice singing in a language she didn't understand but felt somewhere deep inside her bones. The song washed over her, and with it came a flash, sitting on a fire escape in summer heat. This music drifting from an open window. Hands moving across a page, sketching the skyline, the feeling of being seen, being known. I remember this, she whispered. He went absolutely still. What do you remember? Not everything. Just a moment, drawing this song, being happy. She looked at him, and tears, she didn't understand at all, were moving down her face. Was I happy before? You were extraordinary, he said, his voice rough and cracking at the edges. You were terrifying and extraordinary, and so completely alive it was sometimes painful to look directly at you. He took a step closer, and yes, I believe you were happy, we both were. Why didn't you tell me about this room? Because I wanted you to find it yourself. I wanted to see if you were still in there, whether the instincts were still intact. His smile was small and sad. You picked that lock in under a minute. She is still there, just sleeping. She moved to the drafting table and ran her fingers over the charcoal, resting there. What if I don't want to wake her up? What if I actually like being ordinary? You were never ordinary. He was directly behind her now, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, but not touching. Not even when you were trying your hardest to be. You organized your coffee shop sketches by mathematical proportion. You instinctively sat with your back to walls and your eyes on exits in every room you entered. You couldn't help being exceptional. It's part of who you are at the most basic level. She picked up a piece of charcoal and felt its weight settle into her palm. Show me something, she said. What do you want to see? I want to see what she saw when she looked at you. Understanding moved across his face. He walked to the window, positioning himself in the light. And then, without another word, he began undoing the buttons on his shirt. What are you doing? You asked to see what she saw. He slid the shirt off his shoulders, and she stopped breathing. Tattoos covered him, not just his arms, his chest, his back, his ribs, dragons and large cats, and a phoenix rendered in black and gray and hints of deep red. Every inch of skin told a story of survival and violence, and years lived right at the edge of everything. Scars interrupted the ink, old wounds, a road map of a life that had never been safe. She sketched every single one of these, he said quietly. She would trace them with her fingers first, learning the paths, and then she would draw. She said she was memorizing me, making sure that even if everything else burned down around us, she could reconstruct me from memory. She moved toward him without making a conscious decision to do so, the charcoal still in her hand. May I? He nodded once, not trusting his voice. She reached out slowly, and her fingertips made contact with the dragon that wound across his ribs. His sharp intake of breath made her pause, but he didn't pull away. She traced the scales, and her hand knew the pattern, knew where the design started and where it ended, knew the story it told without being told. Her other hand lifted the charcoal to paper. And she began to draw. The world narrowed down to exactly this, the sensation of his skin under her fingertips. The sound of charcoal moving across paper, the music still playing, a woman's voice wrapping around them both like a spell being cast slowly. She drew the dragon, then the bird on his shoulder, the other creature across his heart. Her hands moved faster, more confident, and she wasn't who she thought she was anymore. She was something else, someone else. When she stepped back, the paper was covered in fragments of him, and they were good, professional. The work of someone who had spent years studying this one subject with complete obsessive devotion. He looked at the sketches and something broke in his expression. You remember? No, she said, but she does. She lives in my hands, in my fingers. Even when my mind can't reach her, my body can. He crossed the space between them. And this time, when he touched her face, she leaned into it instead of away. His thumb traced her cheekbone, and her eyes drifted closed. "Tell me something true," she whispered. "I waited 3 years to touch you again," he said, his voice stripped of every layer of armor. "Every single day, I told myself that if I could just find you, if I could just see you one more time, I could let you go if that's what you needed. But I was lying to myself." His forehead pressed gently against hers, his breath warm against her lips. "I will never let you go, never. I would take this whole world apart before I lose you again. That's obsession. Yes, that's terrifying. Yes, I should run. You could try." His lips curved against her skin, "but your body would betray you. It already knows exactly where it belongs." He was right. She could feel it in the way her pulse actually slowed in his presence. The way her breathing found the same rhythm as his. The way every single part of her was screaming the word home when he was this close. "This is insane," she said. "I know. I don't even know you. You know me better than anyone ever has. You just don't remember it yet." The music built around them, piano and voice rising to something heartbreaking and beautiful all at once. His hand slid gently into her hair, cradling her head with a devastating gentleness that shouldn't have been possible from hands that had clearly done violent things. "I won't kiss you," he said, "not until you remember why you married me, not until you choose me with complete knowledge of who I am and what that choice actually means." Disappointment and relief fought each other in her chest simultaneously. "What if I never remember? Then I will start from the beginning. I will court you. I will make you fall in love with me all over again. I will do whatever it takes for however long it takes." His smile was small, but it was real. "I can be very patient when the thing I'm waiting for is worth it." "And Mia, you have always been worth everything." She stepped back, needing space, needing air. "I need to know more about her." "About us, about what actually happened. Then ask me." He retrieved his shirt, pulling it back on with quiet ease. "I will tell you anything you want to know. The evidence I stole. What happened to it?" His expression went carefully neutral. "You hid it somewhere before you had the procedure done. You left yourself clues, but they were encrypted. We've been trying to decode them for 3 years. We meaning my people," he said. "The best specialists I could find anywhere in the world." He began buttoning his shirt with precise movements. "But you were better than all of them. You knew how your own mind worked. You left clues that only you could ever interpret. Do you have them, the clues?" He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "In my office. I was looking at them this morning, actually, hoping that you being here might help unlock something." "Show me. Are you certain? Once you start down this path, there's no going back. You'll either remember everything, or you'll have to live knowing you might never." She looked at the sketches scattered across the drafting table. Evidence of a woman who had loved someone so deeply, she had documented every inch of him. Who had been willing to erase herself completely just to protect him. "Show me," she repeated. "I need to know who she was. Because I think," she stopped, swallowed, "I think I might need to become her again to survive this." His smile was proud and fierce. "There she is." And for the first time since she had stumbled into that bar, she felt something other than fear. She felt purpose, direction. She felt like waking up. His office occupied an entire corner of the penthouse. Glass walls on 2 sides offering views of the city in both directions. But unlike the rest of the space, this room was built to withstand things. She could see where blast panels could drop over the windows. The subtle reinforcement in the glass spoke of bulletproofing. This was where he made decisions that moved the criminal world around him. A massive desk dominated the center of the room. Dark wood that looked like it came from a single enormous tree. Multiple screens displayed information she didn't fully understand: security feeds, financial tickers, shipping manifests in several different languages. But it was the wall behind the desk that made her breath catch. Every inch of surface was covered in papers, photographs, maps. Red string connected various points in a pattern that looked at first like madness, but felt on closer inspection completely methodical. Purposeful, this is my obsession, he said quietly, gesturing to the wall. 3 years of trying to find you. 3 years of trying to understand what you left behind. She moved closer and studied the collection. Photos of her, of Mia Morrison, in various cities. Always alone, always watchful. Security footage showing her in coffee shops and libraries and grocery stores. Living a life so deliberately small, it had to have been intentional. You've been watching me, she said. Not an accusation, just a fact, for the last 8 months. Once I confirmed you were alive, I had to be certain you were safe, that no one else had found you first. He stood beside her, close enough that she felt the warmth of him. Every day I wanted to come to you, to just talk to you, but I knew you wouldn't remember me, knew you would run. So you set up the whole thing with Daniel. Yes, I started to say something, searching for the right word. Terrifying, controlling, manipulative. Yes, he turned to face her. Why aren't you denying it, trying to justify it? Because you deserve the truth, all of it. His dark eyes held hers without flinching. I am a criminal, Mia. I run one of the most powerful organizations on the East Coast. I deal in violence and fear. I have taken more lives than I can accurately count. And I would burn this entire city to ash if it meant keeping you safe. He took a step toward her. I am not a good man. I have never once pretended to be, but I am your man, and I will do whatever it takes to protect what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified her, should have sent her straight for the nearest exit. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in her stomach. Show me the clues, she said, keeping her voice steadier than she felt. He moved to the large painting on the far wall and swung the heavy frame aside, revealing a safe built directly into the concrete. The kind that needed fingerprint, an eye scan, and a code to open. Inside was a small metal box. When he opened it, she saw a single drive and a folded piece of paper. This is what you left for yourself, he said, handing her the paper. The handwriting was hers, the same as in the journal, but the message inside was coded. Numbers and symbols that made no initial sense, geographic coordinates, a series of cryptic phrases. The dragon sleeps where the bird once burned. Remember the record in reverse. Track 3, side 2, 2 minutes 40, 7 seconds. Her head throbbed. The familiar ache she had been living with for months intensified until she swayed on her feet. He caught her immediately, his arms solid around her waist. Easy. Your brain is fighting the blocks. Don't push too hard. The coordinates, she managed, I know them. I don't know how I know them, but I know them. A location near the capital. We've searched that area dozens of times. There's nothing there. The dragon sleeps where the bird once burned, she repeated. Her free hand lifted to the tattoo on his neck. This dragon, the bird, was my father's symbol, he said quietly. Before everything, before I had to deal with what had to be dealt with, he had a bird tattooed over his heart. Did he have properties, safe locations, hundreds, all of them searched? She looked at the drive. What's on this? Encrypted files. Even our best people can't crack them. They require a password. We don't have it. In reverse. Track 3, side 2, 240, 7. The words came out of her mouth before she had consciously thought them. That record in the other room. Track 3 on the second side. 2 minutes and 40, 7 seconds into it. His eyes went wide. The record is still in there. We moved back through the penthouse together, fast. The record was still on the turntable exactly where he had left it. He set the needle with careful precision, counting tracks, waiting for the exact right moment. At 2 minutes and 40, 7 seconds, the singer held a note that stretched out into what felt like forever. And underneath it, barely audible at all, was something else. Another voice, her voice. The password is written on your skin. Count the scales on the dragon's tail. Each scale contains one character. Read them in reverse, starting from the tip. The music kept playing, but neither of them was listening to it anymore. He was already pulling his shirt off, turning to show her his back where the tail of the dragon began at his lower spine. She moved close and studied the tattoo carefully. And there, so subtle she never would have noticed if she wasn't specifically looking, were tiny marks within each individual scale. Not imperfections in the ink, letters, numbers, hidden in plain sight on the body of the man she had loved. You designed this piece, he realized aloud. You insisted on adding the detail to the tale yourself. You weren't just decorating it. You were writing the code inside the negative space. You knew I would never suspect it. Never look there. Her fingers traced the scales and counted them, 20, 7 in total, each one containing a single character. She grabbed paper and pen from the drafting table and wrote them down in reverse order, exactly as the recording had instructed. When she finished, she had a string of characters that looked like complete nonsense, but it felt right. Like something finally clicking into its proper place. They went back to the office. He inserted the drive and brought up the encryption. She typed the password with shaking hands. The files opened. Thousands of documents inside, financial records, audio recordings, photographs. But the first file that opened automatically was a video, and the woman on screen was her. Not the Mia Morrison she had been living as the other her. She sat in what looked like a hotel room, her expression calm, her eyes rimmed red like she had been crying for hours. She wore dark clothing and her hair was longer. "Hello," she said to the camera, "to me, I suppose. If you're watching this, it worked. They took your memories. You're probably terrified right now, probably completely confused, and you're probably with him right now while he tries to explain the impossible." She sank into the chair behind the desk, unable to pull her eyes away from the screen. "I need you to understand something," the woman on screen continued. "Everything I did to protect him. The man you're with right now, your husband, he is good. I know that sounds completely insane given what he does and who he is. But in a world full of people who chose to be monsters, he tried his hardest to be something better. For me, for us," tears moved down the face on the screen, her face. "I found evidence that his father was betraying the people around him. Evidence that would force him to kill his own blood, and I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let him become that kind of man. So I made a deal with Daniel. I would disappear, take the evidence with me, erase myself entirely, and in exchange, he would never have to know the full extent of what his father had done." She laughed bitterly on screen. "I was so incredibly stupid. I didn't see that Daniel was playing both sides the entire time. That he would sell me out the moment it became profitable for him to do so." The woman leaned closer to the camera, her expression fierce and focused. "But I wasn't stupid about everything. The evidence on this drive will destroy the people who did this to you. It will prove they were involved in the original betrayal. Use it, burn them completely," and then she paused. "Swallowed hard, then decide if you want to remember. There is a way to reverse what was done. The doctor's complete notes on the procedure are here. It can be undone, but listen to me. She used her own name like it belonged to a separate person, entirely. If you reverse it, you will remember everything, the love and the joy and the wonderful moments, but also the violence. Also, the things she did. All of it comes back together." She reached out and touched the camera lens, like she could reach through time and touch the person watching. "I loved him more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. And if you're watching this, it means he loved me enough to spend years searching for me. That's worth something. That's worth absolutely everything." The video ended. The silence in the office was total. Heavy, suffocating. She couldn't look at him, couldn't face the weight of what she had just watched. "You sacrificed yourself for me," he said finally, his voice completely wrecked. "You loved me so much you erased yourself." "She did," she corrected quietly. "She loved you. I don't even know you." He moved into her line of sight and crouched in front of the chair so their eyes were exactly level. "Your body knows me. Your hands know me. Even without the memories, you feel it, the pull between us." "That's real. That's not enough," she whispered. "Then let me make it enough." He took her hands, his touch careful despite the roughness built into his palms. "Let me show you who we were and who we can still be. We use this evidence. We finish what you started." His grip tightened carefully. "You gave me a gift 3 years ago. You tried to save me from having to do the worst thing imaginable. But Mia, I did it anyway. The evidence got out through other channels. My people had no choice. Your sacrifice protected me from nothing, except 3 years of not knowing the full truth of it. 3 years without you, he said. 3 years of half. Living and searching and hoping. He stood pulling her up with him. No more incomplete measures. We end this together. I'm not her, she said desperately. I don't know how to be who she was. I don't know how to fight or to steal or to. Your body knows. He was already moving, pulling her gently with him through the penthouse to a door she hadn't noticed before. Let me show you. The door opened onto stairs leading down to the floor below. A fortress within a fortress. The walls had been reinforced with steel and concrete until the space felt like it existed underground somehow. A complete combat range, soundproofed walls, reinforced everything, targets hanging at various distances. A weapons cabinet holding enough firepower to outfit a small army. This is insane, she breathed. He unlocked the cabinet and withdrew a handgun, checked it with practiced efficiency, making sure it was unloaded, then held it out to her. Take it. I don't know how, take it, he repeated gently. Her hand closed around the grip, and the world shifted under her feet. The weight of the weapon was perfect, exactly right. Her fingers found the correct positions without any thought required. Her stance adjusted automatically, feet apart, knees bent, weight perfectly balanced. She whispered something involuntary. Muscle memory, he said. Your mind was cleared, but your body wasn't. Loaded. He handed her the magazine. Again, her hands knew exactly what to do. It clicked into place. She chambered around and kept the weapon pointed safely downrange. Fire when you're ready. She aimed at a target about 20 feet away. Exhaled slowly. Squeezed. The shot was perfect. Center. She fired again and again, each shot finding exactly where she intended with a precision that made no sense for someone claiming not to know weapons. When the magazine was empty, she lowered the gun. Her hands were shaking. I don't understand this. You were trained, he said simply. Years of it, hundreds of hours, thousands of rounds fired. That kind of conditioning doesn't disappear with a memory procedure. He took the gun gently from her shaking hands and set it aside. Then he did something she didn't expect at all. He reached back into the cabinet and withdrew another weapon, checked it, loaded it, and pressed it against his own chest. Right over his heart. What are you doing? Giving you a choice. His voice was calm and steady. You say you don't know me. Don't trust me, so I'm giving you the actual power here. If you truly believe I'm a monster, if you believe I'm keeping you here for purely selfish reasons. Pull the trigger. End this. The safety is off. You're insane. I'm desperate. His eyes held hers, dark and fathomless. I have waited 3 years. I have turned over every possible stone. I have stayed faithful to a woman who had no memory of me, who might never get those memories back. His free hand came up to cup her face. So yes, I am insane. But I am yours, and I am giving you the choice. Shoot me or trust me. Her hands lifted toward the weapon. His finger moved to the guard, ready. The metal was cold against her palms. I could kill you, she whispered. You could. You have the skill for it. At this range, you wouldn't miss. Then why do this? Because you need to know you have real power here. Not the illusion of it. Actual control. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I manipulated events to bring you here. I claimed you as property to keep you alive. But Mia, I will not keep you if you truly want to leave. Even if it destroys me. The headache that had been building all afternoon exploded into something catastrophic. Pain lanced through her skull, and with it came a memory, not a fragment, a complete, vivid, real memory. Standing in this exact room, him behind her, arms around her, adjusting her grip, his breath warm against her ear. You're pulling left, relax your shoulder, her own voice laughing. I'm perfect and you know it, him turning her around. The weapon clattering to the floor forgotten, his voice, fierce and completely open. You're perfect and I love you, and if anything ever happened to you, I would burn this city and everyone in it. Her own voice again, kissing him. You're so dramatic. I love you too, you impossible man. The memory hit her so hard she gasped. The weapon slipped from her hands. He caught it smoothly, safed it, and she collapsed against his chest. I remembered, she sobbed into his shirt. Just one moment, but I remembered. His arms came around her. Solid, steady, safe, tell me, he said. She did. Every detail. The laughter and the ease and the way two people in love move around each other like they've always known where the other one will be. When she finished, he was trembling. Do you believe me now, that what we had was real? I don't know what I believe, she admitted. But I know I'm not leaving, not yet. I need more. I need to understand who she was, who we were. Then let me help you remember. He tilted her face up, his thumb brushing her lower lip. Your body knows me. Let it guide your mind. I'm not ready, not that, he said immediately. I told you. I won't go there until you remember why you chose me. But let me hold you. Let me give your body something to recognize. Sometimes it has to go first before the mind can follow. It was dangerous. She knew it was dangerous, but she was exhausted from fighting the pull. Exhausted from pretending her body didn't recognize him on some level that existed below thought. Okay, she whispered. He led her back through the penthouse to the bedroom, the massive bed that carried his scent even when he wasn't in it. He lay down first on his back and held out a hand. She took it, let him pull her down beside him. And when his arms came around her, tucking her against his chest, her body dissolved into him like something coming home after being away for far too long. Tell me about us, she said into the darkness. Tell me everything. And he did, his voice low and steady and rough in places. He told her about the night they met, the way she had held a weapon to his head and demanded access, how she had come to steal financial records and walked away having stolen something else entirely. He told her about their wedding, how she had refused anything traditional, how she had worn red and he had worn black, and the official performing the ceremony had looked genuinely afraid of them both. He told her about the life they had built together in the spaces between the violence, the close calls and the celebrations, the fights and the finding each other again after. And as he spoke, more memories surfaced in her, fragments and flashes, the taste of his mouth, the sound of his laugh, the feeling of his hands on her. She fell asleep wrapped in his arms and his voice, and the growing certainty that the woman she had been had loved this man with a ferocity that existed somewhere beneath memory. And maybe, just maybe, she could love him again. In her dreams, the woman she used to be looked at her and smiled. And for the first time since she had woken up as Mia Morrison, she smiled back. She woke to her phone vibrating against the nightstand. A phone she didn't remember owning until he had placed it there the day before, loaded with a single contact. His name glowed on the screen at 3 a.m, but when she reached for it, the notification showed a message from a number she didn't recognize. I know what he told you. I know what he showed you. But there are things he's keeping from you, Mia. Things about the child. Meet me at the old station on 5th. Come alone, or you'll never know the truth about what happened 3 years ago. Her blood turned to ice water. The child, the words settled in her chest like a stone, heavy and inexplicable. She looked at him sleeping beside her, his face softened by a vulnerability she had only seen in these stolen hours of darkness. The dragon on his neck, rising and falling with each slow breath. Her fingers ached to trace it again, to ground herself, but doubt was its own kind of poison. She slipped out of the bed with a stealth her body remembered even if her mind didn't. Penthouse was silent, except for the distant hum of the city far below. She dressed in the dark. Jeans, a black sweater, boots that felt like they had been built for running or for fighting. In the entrance she found his jacket draped over a chair. Her fingers found the keys in the pocket. She told herself she was only going to listen. She told herself this wasn't betrayal. The elevator felt like falling. The parking level smelled of concrete and expensive machinery. She chose the most inconspicuous vehicle available, a black sedan that would still cost more than most people's homes, but didn't scream criminal empire the way some of the others did. The engine started without a sound. She was moving before she could second guess herself. The city at this hour was a completely different world. Neon bleeding into rain, slicked streets. The few people she passed looked like shadows of themselves. The old station on 5th had been closed for renovations 2 years ago and never reopened. Its entrance a dark mouth that swallowed light and hope in equal measure. She parked 3 blocks away and walked the rest. Her hands stayed in her pockets, fingers wrapped around the small canister of defense spray she had found in the glove compartment. His people would have real weapons, but he had put this here for her, something she could hold without having to remember how to hurt someone. Daniel was waiting under the broken streetlight at the entrance. For a moment, he looked exactly like the brother she remembered. Rumpled clothes, haunted eyes. The man who had supposedly raised her after parents who never existed died in an accident that never happened. But then he smiled, and it was all wrong, too sharp, too knowing. "You came," he said. His voice carried none of the desperation from the night before. This was a man who had gotten exactly what he wanted. "You mentioned a child," she said, keeping 10 feet between them. Her weight balanced on the balls of her feet. "Ready? Our nephew," he said. He pulled out his phone. The screen's light carved harsh shadows across his face. "Your son, 2 years old, brown eyes, dark hair, currently living under a different name in a foster home in Philadelphia." The world tilted sideways. She saw the photo he held up. A toddler with her face and his serious, ancient expression, playing with blocks in what looked like a daycare. Her knees threatened to buckle. She locked them, forced steel into her spine. "That's not possible. I would remember." "You were 6 weeks along when you decided to erase yourself." Daniel pocketed the phone, and his smile widened. "The doctor advised against the procedure at that stage, said it could harm the baby. But you were so determined to save your precious husband from his family complications that you went through with it anyway. The baby survived. You gave birth 4 months after the procedure, completely unaware you had ever been pregnant in the first place." "You're lying," but her hands were shaking. Her body knew something her mind couldn't reach. "Am I? Ask yourself why you've had phantom aches in your midsection for months. Why your body feels different in ways you can't name. Why you avoid mirrors sometimes when you're changing." He took a step closer. "Your subconscious remembers what was taken from you, Mia, both the memories and the child. If this is true, why didn't you tell me? Why keep him hidden?" "He was my insurance," Daniel said. Another step. They were 5 feet apart, close enough that she could smell cigarettes on his breath. "I sold you to the rival family." "Yes, but I kept one piece for myself. As long as I have access to the son of the man running that organization, I have protection. Power, a bargaining piece against everyone." The betrayal cut deeper than anything she had felt yet. "You used a child, my child, for money and territory. I used the asset you created when you decided to build a life with a man like him." His mask dropped completely. Underneath was something cold, calculating, reptilian. "You were supposed to stay small, Mia. Stay in your lane as the quiet graphic designer nobody noticed. But then you started dreaming, started asking questions. His people started getting closer to finding you. I had to move faster. The stalking, pushing you toward that bar, all of it was a transaction. He wanted you back. I wanted certain guarantees. Financial, territorial, we made a deal. He gets his wife back. I walk away clean with enough to disappear." His hand moved toward his jacket, and every instinct she had screamed at her. "But then you started remembering," he said. "Started becoming a problem instead of a solved one." She saw the weapon before her mind fully processed what was happening. Saw it rise, time slowed down to amber, and in that crystalline moment, she remembered something, not everything, not the full 3 years, but she remembered this specific thing, standing in a room with him behind her, his hands guiding hers, teaching her the geometry of situations like this one. "Never hesitate, Mia. The moment you see the threat, you move." Her body moved before thought could interfere. She dropped low and left. The defense spray was already out. She held her breath and sent a stream directly into Daniel's eyes before twisting away from the mist. His shot went wide. He stumbled back, clawing at his face. She closed the distance from the side, clear of the spray. Her hand caught his wrist and twisted with leverage she hadn't known she possessed. The weapon clattered away into the darkness. "You sold my son." The words came out in the voice from the recording. Cold, professional, lethal, you sold me. "You tried to destroy everything I loved. He's a criminal," Daniel screamed, his voice bouncing off the stone and steel around them. "The man you chose is a killer. You loved him so much you made yourself forget what was real." "No," she said. She twisted his arm harder, felt something give. "I made myself forget to save him from becoming his father. You took that sacrifice and made it about profit. He didn't tell you everything." Daniel gasped through pain and chemicals. "Ask him about the deal he made with his own people. Ask him why they're really letting you live." The voice came from the entrance like a blade cutting through the dark. She turned. He stood there, backlit by the broken streetlight. Not alone. 4 of his people flanked him, weapons drawn but lowered. The look on his face was beyond anger, beyond betrayal. It was devastation. "I woke up and you were gone," he said, his voice controlled but cracking underneath. "I thought they had taken you. I thought I had lost you again." "He told me about the child," she said, keeping her grip on Daniel. "About my son, our son." Something cracked completely open in his expression. Raw, gutted. "I was going to tell you when you woke up," he said. "I got the confirmation days ago. I've been looking for him this whole time, Mia. I've been trying to bring him home to us. You knew," the words tasted like acid. "You knew I had a child and you didn't tell me. I knew you were carrying when you disappeared." His voice broke, actually broke. "I didn't know if you had kept him, if something had happened during the procedure. I've been searching for 3 years and I only found him recently. I was confirming everything before I told you because you deserved one moment of peace first." She released Daniel with a shove. "I'm not fragile. I deserve to know." "You deserve to heal," he said, and the words came out with a force that made his own people shift uneasily. "You deserved one moment before I told you that your handler sold your child to strangers for money." The silence that followed was complete. Even Daniel had gone still, reading the energy in the room, the way a rat reads for danger. "He's in Philadelphia," she asked, her voice steadier than everything inside her felt. "Yes, a good home. Temporary placement. The family doesn't know who he really is." He took one step forward, then stopped himself deliberately. "I have extraction plans ready. Legal documentation prepared under multiple identities. I was going to ask you whether you wanted me to bring him home, or whether you needed more time to find your footing first." "I don't need more time." The words came from somewhere that had never been touched by the procedure. Something primal and completely certain. "He's mine, he's ours, we bring him home." His exhale was shaky with relief. "Then we bring him home." After, Daniel interrupted, and they both turned to look at him like they had forgotten he was still breathing. "After you hear what the deal actually was, what he agreed to in exchange for claiming you, Daniel," he said quietly, "I strongly suggest you stop talking now. She deserves the truth." Blood was running from Daniel's nose. "Tell her about the agreement. Tell her about the clause requiring heirs." The world stopped. "What? It's not what he's making it sound like," he started. "He agreed to produce heirs for his organization within 5 years," Daniel said, his voice cracking with bitter satisfaction. "That's the price of their protection. You're not his wife, you're his means to an end. That's what property really means in their world." She looked at him, searching his face for denial. "Found only guilt. Is it true?" "The council required assurances," he said carefully. "Proof that my claim on you was legitimate, not just sentiment. The agreement stipulates that within 5 years, we provide heirs to solidify the alliance. And if I refuse," her voice was ice, "if you decide you won't agree to this, then the agreement is void. And the protection ends." He met her eyes without looking away. "And 17 different contracts will be active against you within 2 days. So I have no choice. You have every choice, Mia. He moved closer despite the visible tension in his people. If you want to run, I will help you run. New identities, a new life for you and your son. I'll spend whatever it takes to keep you safe at a distance. But if you stay, if you choose me, it has to be real. They will know if it isn't. 3 heirs in 5 years, she said flatly. One already exists. His eyes went very still. If I present him to the council, prove his birth predates the agreement, they'll have to count him. Then I just need 2 more. Don't, he said. The word was quiet but absolute. Don't reduce what we had to a transaction. But that's what it is, isn't it? She turned away, unable to look at his face. That's what I am. A deal dressed up in love and fate. Daniel's laugh started low and built into something broken and wheezing. Victory and madness in equal parts. See, you can't even deny it. The great man who tore apart the East Coast searching for his ghost. And it all comes down to a political contract. He moved so fast she barely registered it, one moment standing by the far wall, the next his hand was around Daniel's throat, and Daniel was against the concrete. You took her from me, he said, his voice dropping to a register that made the air feel different. You convinced her to erase herself. You kept her sedated and small and hidden for 3 years while you sold everything she left behind. I was protecting her, Daniel choked out, his grip tightened. Then the weapon appeared and the shot was precise and controlled. Through Daniel's shoulder, pinning him to the concrete, the laughter became a scream. That, he said softly, is for touching what's mine. Another shot, a graze across the ribs, a warning with teeth. The screaming doubled, that is for selling my son. Another, thigh, the screaming became sobbing. That is for 3 years of her pain. Stop. Her voice cut through everything. He stopped, turned to look at her, and the man she saw was the one everyone feared. Cold, controlled, capable of things she hadn't fully faced yet. He tried to kill you, Mia. He sold our child. Give me one reason, because I want to do it. The words hung between them. His eyes widened. Just a fraction. Just enough to show surprise breaking through, and then something else. Recognition. He handed her the weapon. The weight was familiar. The warmth from his grip transferred to hers. And she understood that this was a test, not of capability. Her body had already proven that. This was a test of who she was choosing to be. Whether she would stay as the small, frightened version, or become the full version of herself, or whether she would find something new in the space between them. She walked to where Daniel lay bleeding and crouched down to his eye level. He looked up at her through tears and pain and chemicals. And for a moment she saw the man who had pretended to be her brother, who had fabricated 20 years of memories and planted them in her head like seeds, who had sold a child for territory. You took everything from me, she said quietly. My memories, my identity. My son, you made me small and afraid and invisible, but you know what? You failed. She pressed the weapon to his forehead. Because even without memories, even as the version of me that you built and maintained, I was never actually ordinary. I was just sleeping, Mia. His voice broke on her name. Please, I'm sorry. I was desperate. I was scared. You were greedy, she said. She pulled back the hammer with her thumb. And now you get to see what happens when someone threatens this family. For one heartbeat, she meant it completely. Every part of her wanted to pull that trigger, wanted to call it justice and be done with it. But something he had said echoed back to her. Don't reduce what we had to a transaction. If she did this here, in cold blood, she became something specific. No more choice about who to be. She would be exactly the weapon the council expected. The killer her body remembered being. But she would also be the mother her son needed to stay away from. She lowered the weapon. No, she said. The word felt like losing and winning at the exact same time. I'm not going to kill you, because that's what you're expecting. That's the story you've been telling yourself to make peace with what you did, that I'm a monster who eliminates threats without conscience. But I'm not. She stood, her legs steady despite the adrenaline crash starting to move through her. I'm a mother who just found out her son exists. And I'm going to get him back, and you're going to help me. Daniel's confusion looked almost genuine. What, you have contacts, documentation, access to systems. You're going to use all of it to help our legal claim on our son move faster." She turned to look at him, who watched her with an expression she couldn't fully read yet. "And then when our son is safe, he can decide what happens to you." Because that's what partners do. They make the important decisions together, even the ones that involve violence. His smile was slow, deeply proud, predatory in the best possible way. "There she is. I'm not who I used to be," she said. She handed him back the weapon. "I'm not who I was pretending to be either. I'm something new, something that remembers how to fight, but chooses when to actually do it. And right now, I choose to go get my son." He holstered the weapon and closed the remaining distance between them in 2 steps. His hands cupped her face, and his kiss was not gentle. It was claiming, desperate, a declaration in every language that existed. When he pulled back, his forehead pressed against hers. 3 heirs in 5 years, he murmured, not because of an agreement. "Because I want a family with you. Because I want to be there this time. Because I want to watch you become a mother and know I get to be beside you for it." Sweet words from someone in your line of work. True words from your husband. He kissed her again, softer. "I'll dissolve the council's agreement. I'll find another way to guarantee your safety. You are not livestock, Mia." "You are going to agree to it anyway," she said. She pulled back enough to see the shock register across his face. "But on my terms, we get him back first. Then I decide if I want more children. And if I do, it's because I want a family, not because some old criminals think they have a claim on my body. The council won't accept that. The council will accept exactly what I tell them to accept." She felt the other version of herself rising in her voice, sharpening her words into something precise. "Because I have something they want far more than heirs. I have the evidence that can destroy them completely, and I am absolutely going to use it." The foster home in Philadelphia was painted cheerful yellow, which felt almost offensive against the gray November sky. A tire swing moved gently in the front yard. Children's laughter floated through the windows, sounds of innocence that made her chest ache with something she didn't have adequate words for. Her son was in there, the child she had carried and given birth to without any memory of the process. The ghost's most important legacy, grown into a toddler who knew nothing about his parents beyond whatever fabricated story Daniel had provided along the way. "We wait for the signal," he said quietly beside her, but his fingers tapped a rhythm against the steering wheel that she was starting to recognize as his anxiety showing through the control. "Our man is inside posing as a social services inspector. Once he confirms our son's location, we move." "We should have just taken him," she said, her hands tight in her lap. "And traumatized him," he replied gently. "He's 2 years old, Mia. He doesn't know us. If we grab him like criminals, we terrify him. We do this the careful way. We become his parents, not his kidnappers." The logic was sound, but everything in her wanted to run into that house right now and simply hold him. Verify that he was real, that this wasn't one more elaborate lie in a life constructed entirely from them. What if he doesn't like me? The question escaped before she could catch it. Small and afraid in a way the other version of herself never was. What if he looks at me and knows I forgot him? Then we teach him to love us, he said, certain in the way that was becoming familiar. The same way I showed you how to love me again, with patience and more attention than any reasonable person should give. You didn't show me anything, I just did. Then we trust that. He raised her hand to his lips and pressed them to her knuckles like a prayer. We trust that blood knows blood, that some bonds exist below memory or reason. His phone buzzed, a message from their man inside. Target confirmed. Northeast bedroom, 2nd floor. Foster mother is cooperative. Move now. She was already reaching for the door handle. His hand caught her arm gently, held her one moment more. Whatever happens in there, however he reacts, we walk out of this house with our son. Understood, she understood perfectly, saw the same desperation she felt reflected in his eyes. They had both lost too much already. There would be no losing this. The foster mother was exactly what she had expected. Kind face, probably in her 50s. The type of woman who dedicated her life to caring for children who needed someone. She met them at the door with their man beside her, his false credentials having put her at ease even as his eyes scanned constantly for any threat. Mr. and Mrs. Kim, she smiled warmly and gestured them inside. I've been caring for your son for about 6 months now. Such a sweet boy, quiet, very observant, never cries, even when the other children are fussy, never cries. Those 2 words hit her like a punch to the sternum. What kind of experience taught a 2-year-old not to cry? We'd like to see him, she said, keeping her voice steadier than her entire chest felt. Please. The woman led them through a house that smelled like crayons and baked things. Past walls covered in children's artwork, a living room full of toys, a breakfast table set for more than 2. This was a genuinely good place, a safe place, and they were about to interrupt it with the full weight of their reality. The stairs creaked with each step, and she could hear voices from above, a woman singing, slightly off, key but tender, a smaller voice trying to echo the melody. Her heart seized inside her chest. He's with my assistant, the foster mother explained. We were reading before nap time. She opened the door to a bedroom painted soft blue, a crib in one corner, a small bed in the other, stuffed animals on shelves, a mobile of stars hanging from the ceiling, and there, sitting on the floor with a picture book, was her son. He had her complexion and her nose, but his eyes, those serious old soul eyes, were purely his father. His hair was dark and slightly curly. He wore tiny jeans and a sweater with a cartoon animal on it. He looked up when they entered, and his gaze went immediately to him, not to her, to his father. She watched something extraordinary happen on the face of the man beside her. Every carefully maintained layer of control dissolved completely into naked emotion. Love and grief and joy so overwhelming it looked almost exactly like physical pain. He dropped to one knee, made himself small, unthreatening, extended one hand toward the boy. Little one, he said softly, and the name he used sounded like something sacred. Do you know who I am? The boy studied him with that unnerving intensity, then looked at her, his small face scrunched in concentration. And then he said one word, Mama. Her knees gave out. She hit the floor beside her husband. Tears she had no control over streaming down her face. And she nodded. Yes, yes, baby. I'm your mama. How does he know? The foster mother's voice was confused and concerned from behind them. He's never spoken in another language. We didn't even know he could. Blood knows blood, their man said quietly from the doorway. Some things exist below language, below what the mind consciously holds. The boy tilted his head and studied her with those ancient eyes. Then, slowly, carefully, reached out his tiny hand and touched her face. His fingers traced her cheekbone, and she saw him recognize the gesture, saw the same thing happen in him that had happened in her when his father touched her face that first time. Mama, he said again, certain now. She gathered him into her arms. He came without hesitation, wrapped small arms around her neck, buried his face against her shoulder, and something inside her clicked into place. A piece she hadn't known was missing until it returned. I'm sorry, she whispered into his soft hair. I'm so sorry I forgot you. I'm sorry I wasn't there, but I'm here now. We're here, and we are never leaving you again. Mrs. Webb, he said quietly, and his voice had gone formal and absolutely final. We're taking our son home today. You can cooperate with the documentation we've prepared, or this becomes significantly more complicated for everyone here. The woman's face went pale. She looked at their man blocking the doorway. I'm his biological mother, she said, standing with her son still in her arms. He was taken from me through illegal means while I was not able to make informed decisions. We have documentation proving everything. You can call authorities if you choose, but I promise you, the authorities who respond will know us. And then we'll have to do this the way none of us want to. The boy, the woman whispered, is he safe with you? The question hung in the air, heavy with everything it implied. He's safer with us than anywhere else in the world, he said. And there was no threat in the words, just plain truth. We are his parents, we love him, and we have the resources to protect him from the people who tried to use him as a bargaining piece. She looked at the boy, clinging to his mother like he had been waiting his whole short life for exactly this. Looked at the two of them together already, a unit. Then she sighed. The paperwork is downstairs. The window exploded inward. Glass and wood filling the air as 3 people in tactical gear came through at once. She registered weapons, saw where they were aimed, and her body moved before a single thought formed. She twisted hard, putting herself between the threat and her family, and felt the impact, high on her left side, near her chest. The pain came a moment after, secondary to the absolute animal fury that erupted from somewhere primal and without language. She shoved her son into his arms with one hand while the other caught the foster mother, and pushed her toward the other man at the door. Her voice came out rapid and commanding. Get them to safety. There's a reinforced room, northwest corner of the hallway behind the bookshelf. The door panel looks like a thermostat. Go now. Their man moved immediately, taking the woman and moving fast. He hesitated, his face transformed by horror at the blood spreading across her sweater. Go, she said. Protect our son. He went. He took the boy and ran, because he understood in that moment what she was. What she had always been underneath the quiet life she had been living. The most dangerous thing in any room she walked into. The tactical team had been expecting a frightened civilian. They got something else entirely. She moved through them like water through cracks. Precise, economical, every movement serving exactly one purpose. When it was over, the room was still. She stood, her breathing controlled, assessing. 2 threats neutralized, 1 incapacitated outside. No additional threats visible. She had maybe minutes before her body registered the full damage. She could feel fluid building when she drew breath. Not good. The door opened. He came through alone, his face carved from terror and fury in equal parts. Their man has them, he said. Are you? He saw the blood. No, no, Mia. No. Just a graze, she said, and her own voice sounded distant and slightly wrong to her own ears. Got the first one before they could properly aim. You took a bullet for us. He was beside her, hands moving over the wound with practiced efficiency. You stepped in front of why would you? Because you were holding our son. The words came out slightly slurred. Shock arriving ahead of schedule. Couldn't let him see you fall. Couldn't let him. Stop talking. Save your strength. He tore his shirt and pressed the fabric against the wound. The pressure made her gasp. We need the car. No hospital, she managed, catching his wrist with fingers that were already not cooperating fully. They control the hospitals. Take me to the safe house, the one in the neighborhood 2 miles east. There's a doctor there. He owes you. He's a veterinarian, he said. Was a combat medic before that, she replied. I found that out 3 years ago. He's clean. He's safe. Trust me. Trust the version of me that planned for exactly this possibility. His eyes searched hers, and she watched the moment he understood. She hadn't just left clues about evidence. She had left contingencies for violence, escape routes, safe people, weapons stashes. She had known what loving a man like him meant, and she had prepared accordingly. I'm not losing you again, he said, his voice fracturing. I just got you back. We just got him back. You don't get to die now. Not planning on it, she said. The room was going soft at the edges. But listen, if I don't make it, there's a fail. Safe timer I set before we left. If I don't enter the code within 4 hours, the files go public automatically. Tell the council the clock is running, that killing me only guarantees the upload completes. Mia, and tell him, she said, her voice cracking. Tell my son that his mama fought to come home to him, that she loved him even when she couldn't remember him. You're going to tell him yourself, he said, lifting her as though she weighed nothing at all. Because you're not dying today, I will not allow it. The last thing she saw before the dark took her was his face above hers. Desperate, furious, devastated. The face of a man who had spent 3 years searching for his ghost, and was not about to let anything take her again. She wanted to tell him she loved him, that she remembered now. Not everything, but enough. Enough to know without any doubt that what they had was worth every bit of the fight. But the darkness swallowed the words before they could form. She pulled back the hammer with her thumb. And now you get to see what happens when someone threatens this family. For one heartbeat, she meant it completely. Every part of her wanted to pull that trigger, wanted to call it justice and be done with it. But something he had said echoed back to her, "Don't reduce what we had to a transaction." If she did this here in cold blood, she became something specific. No more choice about who to be. She would be exactly the weapon the council expected. The killer her body remembered being. But she would also be the mother her son needed to stay away from. She lowered the weapon. "No," she said. The word felt like losing and winning at the exact same time. "I'm not going to kill you, because that's what you're expecting. That's the story you've been telling yourself to make peace with what you did. That I'm a monster who eliminates threats without conscience. But I'm not," she stood, her legs steady despite the adrenaline crash starting to move through her. "I'm a mother who just found out her son exists. And I'm going to get him back, and you're going to help me." Daniel's confusion looked almost genuine. "What? You have contacts, documentation, access to systems. You're going to use all of it to help our legal claim on our son move faster." She turned to look at him, who watched her with an expression she couldn't fully read yet. "And then, when our son is safe, he can decide what happens to you. Because that's what partners do. They make the important decisions together, even the ones that involve violence." His smile was slow, deeply proud, predatory in the best possible way. "There she is." "I'm not who I used to be," she said. She handed him back the weapon. "I'm not who I was pretending to be either. I'm something new, something that remembers how to fight, but chooses when to actually do it. And right now, I choose to go get my son." He holstered the weapon and closed the remaining distance between them in 2 steps. His hands cupped her face, and his kiss was not gentle. It was claiming, desperate, a declaration in every language that existed. When he pulled back, his forehead pressed against hers. 3 heirs in 5 years, he murmured, "not because of an agreement. Because I want a family with you. Because I want to be there this time. Because I want to watch you become a mother and know I get to be beside you for it." Sweet words from someone in your line of work. True words from your husband. He kissed her again, softer. "I'll dissolve the council's agreement. I'll find another way to guarantee your safety. You are not livestock, Mia." "You are going to agree to it anyway," she said. She pulled back enough to see the shock register across his face. "But on my terms, we get him back first. Then I decide if I want more children. And if I do, it's because I want a family, not because some old criminals think they have a claim on my body. The council won't accept that. The council will accept exactly what I tell them to accept." She felt the other version of herself rising in her voice, sharpening her words into something precise. "Because I have something they want far more than heirs. I have the evidence that can destroy them completely. And I am absolutely going to use it." The foster home in Philadelphia was painted cheerful yellow, which felt almost offensive against the gray November sky. A tire swing moved gently in the front yard. Children's laughter floated through the windows, sounds of innocence that made her chest ache with something she didn't have adequate words for. Her son was in there. The child she had carried and given birth to without any memory of the process. The ghost's most important legacy, grown into a toddler who knew nothing about his parents beyond whatever fabricated story Daniel had provided along the way. "We wait for the signal," he said quietly beside her, but his fingers tapped a rhythm against the steering wheel that she was starting to recognize as his anxiety showing through the control. "Our man is inside posing as a social services inspector. Once he confirms our son's location, we move." "We should have just taken him," she said, her hands tight in her lap. "And traumatized him," he replied gently. "He's 2 years old, Mia. He doesn't know us. If we grab him like criminals, we terrify him. We do this the careful way. We become his parents, not his kidnappers." The logic was sound. but everything in her wanted to run into that house right now and simply hold him. Verify that he was real, that this wasn't one more elaborate lie in a life constructed entirely from them. What if he doesn't like me? The question escaped before she could catch it. Small and afraid in a way the other version of herself never was. What if he looks at me and knows I forgot him? Then we teach him to love us, he said, certain in the way that was becoming familiar. The same way I showed you how to love me again, with patience and more attention than any reasonable person should give. You didn't show me anything, I just did. Then we trust that. He raised her hand to his lips and pressed them to her knuckles like a prayer. We trust that blood knows blood, that some bonds exist below memory or reason. His phone buzzed. A message from their man inside. Target confirmed, northeast bedroom, second floor. Foster mother is cooperative, move now. She was already reaching for the door handle. His hand caught her arm gently, held her one moment more. Whatever happens in there, however he reacts, we walk out of this house with our son. Understood, she understood perfectly, saw the same desperation she felt reflected in his eyes. They had both lost too much already. There would be no losing this. The foster mother was exactly what she had expected. Kind face, probably in her 50s. The type of woman who dedicated her life to caring for children who needed someone. She met them at the door with their man beside her, his false credentials having put her at ease, even as his eyes scanned constantly for any threat. Mr. and Mrs. Kim. She smiled warmly and gestured them inside. I've been caring for your son for about 6 months now. Such a sweet boy, quiet, very observant, never cries even when the other children are fussy, never cries. Those 2 words hit her like a punch to the sternum. What kind of experience taught a 2-year-old not to cry? We'd like to see him, she said, keeping her voice steadier than her entire chest felt. Please. The woman led them through a house that smelled like crayons and baked things. Past walls covered in children's artwork, a living room full of toys, a breakfast table set for more than 2. This was a genuinely good place, a safe place, and they were about to interrupt it with the full weight of their reality. The stairs creaked with each step, and she could hear voices from above, a woman singing, slightly off, key but tender, a smaller voice trying to echo the melody. Her heart seized inside her chest. He's with my assistant, the foster mother explained. We were reading before nap time. She opened the door to a bedroom painted soft blue, a crib in one corner, a small bed in the other, stuffed animals on shelves, a mobile of stars hanging from the ceiling, and there, sitting on the floor with a picture book, was her son. He had her complexion and her nose, but his eyes, those serious old soul eyes, were purely his father. His hair was dark and slightly curly. He wore tiny jeans and a sweater with a cartoon animal on it. He looked up when they entered, and his gaze went immediately to him, not to her, to his father. She watched something extraordinary happen on the face of the man beside her. Every carefully maintained layer of control dissolved completely into naked emotion. Love and grief and joy so overwhelming it looked almost exactly like physical pain. He dropped to one knee, made himself small, unthreatening, extended one hand toward the boy. Little one, he said softly, and the name he used sounded like something sacred. Do you know who I am? The boy studied him with that unnerving intensity, then looked at her, his small face scrunched in concentration. And then he said one word, Mama. Her knees gave out. She hit the floor beside her husband, tears she had no control over streaming down her face. And she nodded. Yes, yes, baby, I'm your mama. How does he know? The foster mother's voice was confused and concerned from behind them. He's never spoken in another language. We didn't even know he could. Blood knows blood, their man said quietly from the doorway. Some things exist below language, below what the mind consciously holds. The boy tilted his head and studied her with those ancient eyes. Then, slowly, carefully, reached out his tiny hand and touched her face. His fingers traced her cheekbone. And she saw him recognize the gesture, saw the same thing happen in him that had happened in her when his father touched her face that first time. Mama, he said again, Certain now, she gathered him into her arms. He came without hesitation, wrapped small arms around her neck, buried his face against her shoulder, and something inside her clicked into place. A piece she hadn't known was missing until it returned. "I'm sorry," she whispered into his soft hair. "I'm so sorry I forgot you. I'm sorry I wasn't there, but I'm here now. We're here, and we are never leaving you again, Mrs. Webb," he said quietly, and his voice had gone formal and absolutely final. "We're taking our son home today. You can cooperate with the documentation we've prepared, or this becomes significantly more complicated for everyone here." The woman's face went pale. She looked at their man blocking the doorway. "I'm his biological mother," she said, standing with her son still in her arms. "He was taken from me through illegal means, while I was not able to make informed decisions. We have documentation proving everything. You can call authorities if you choose, but I promise you, the authorities who respond will know us. And then we'll have to do this the way none of us want to." "The boy," the woman whispered, "is he safe with you?" The question hung in the air, heavy with everything it implied. "He's safer with us than anywhere else in the world," he said. And there was no threat in the words, just plain truth. "We are his parents, we love him, and we have the resources to protect him from the people who tried to use him as a bargaining piece." She looked at the boy, clinging to his mother like he had been waiting his whole short life for exactly this. Looked at the two of them together already, a unit. Then she sighed. "The paperwork is downstairs." The window exploded inward, glass and wood filling the air as 3 people in tactical gear came through at once. She registered weapons, saw where they were aimed, and her body moved before a single thought formed. She twisted hard, putting herself between the threat and her family, and felt the impact, high on her left side near her chest. The pain came a moment after, secondary to the absolute animal fury that erupted from somewhere primal and without language. She shoved her son into his arms with one hand, while the other caught the foster mother, and pushed her toward the other man at the door. Her voice came out rapid and commanding, "Get them to safety. There's a reinforced room, northwest corner of the hallway, behind the bookshelf. The door panel looks like a thermostat. Go now." Their man moved immediately, taking the woman and moving fast. He hesitated, his face transformed by horror at the blood spreading across her sweater. "Go," she said. "Protect our son." He went. He took the boy and ran, because he understood in that moment what she was. What she had always been underneath the quiet life she had been living. The most dangerous thing in any room she walked into. The tactical team had been expecting a frightened civilian. They got something else entirely. She moved through them like water through cracks. Precise, economical, every movement serving exactly one purpose. When it was over, the room was still. She stood, her breathing controlled, assessing, 2 threats neutralized, 1 incapacitated outside. No additional threats visible. She had maybe minutes before her body registered the full damage. She could feel fluid building when she drew breath. Not good, the door opened. He came through alone, his face carved from terror and fury in equal parts. "Their man has them," he said. "Are you?" He saw the blood. "No, no, Mia. No. Just a graze," she said, and her own voice sounded distant and slightly wrong to her own ears. "Got the first one before they could properly aim. You took a bullet for us." He was beside her, hands moving over the wound with practiced efficiency. "You stepped in front of why would you? Because you were holding our son." The words came out slightly slurred. Shock arriving ahead of schedule, couldn't let him see you fall, couldn't let him. Stop talking, save your strength. He tore his shirt and pressed the fabric against the wound. The pressure made her gasp. "We need the car." "No hospital," she managed, catching his wrist with fingers that were already not cooperating fully. "They control the hospitals. Take me to the safe house, the one in the neighborhood 2 miles east. There's a doctor there, he owes you." "He's a veterinarian," he said. "Was a combat medic before that," she replied. "I found that out 3 years ago. He's clean, he's safe, trust me. Trust the version of me that planned for exactly this possibility." His eyes searched hers, and she watched the moment he understood. She hadn't just left clues about evidence. She had left contingencies for violence, escape routes, safe people, weapons stashes. She had known what loving a man like him meant. And she had prepared accordingly. "I'm not losing you again," he said, his voice fracturing. "I just got you back." "We just got him back. You don't get to die now." "Not planning on it," she said. The room was going soft at the edges. "But listen, if I don't make it, there's a fail. Safe timer I set before we left. If I don't enter the code within 4 hours, the files go public automatically. Tell the council the clock is running. That killing me only guarantees the upload completes." "Mia, and tell him," she said, her voice cracking. "Tell my son that his mama fought to come home to him. That she loved him even when she couldn't remember him. You're going to tell him yourself," he said, lifting her as though she weighed nothing at all. "Because you're not dying today, I will not allow it." The last thing she saw before the dark took her was his face above hers. Desperate, furious, devastated. The face of a man who had spent 3 years searching for his ghost, and was not about to let anything take her again. She wanted to tell him she loved him, that she remembered now. Not everything, but enough. Enough to know without any doubt that what they had was worth every bit of the fight. But the darkness swallowed the words before they could form, and she fell. She woke to the sound of classical music. Something soft and mourning. Adjacent, the ceiling above her was unfamiliar plaster, water-stained, cracked. Nothing like the clean luxury of his penthouse. Pain radiated from her left chest, sharp and insistent, but controlled. She was alive. "Don't move," a voice said from her right. She turned her head carefully. A man she didn't recognize sat in a folding chair, reading by lamplight. Maybe 40, with the kind of tired eyes that came from years of witnessing damage. "The bullet deflected off your rib," he said without looking up. "Tore through muscle, exited clean. No organ damage, but significant blood loss. You should technically be dead." "Sorry to disappoint," that got him to look up. His expression was professionally neutral. "You're disappointing no one, Mrs. Kim, least of all your husband. He's been." He chose his next word carefully. "Intense about your recovery." "Where is he, handling the aftermath of what happened in Philadelphia? 3 eliminated, 1 critically injured. The rival family is denying any involvement, which means they're preparing to escalate. And my son? Safe with one of the team's family members at a secondary location. He's been asking for his mama." That made her chest hurt worse than the wound. "How long was I out?" 36 hours. I kept you sedated while the worst of it resolved. You're stable now, but you need at least a week before. I need to be moving in 2 hours." The doctor's eyebrows rose. "Mrs. Kim, you were shot in the chest. I understand that, and I need to be moving in 2 hours. She pushed herself carefully upright, gritting her teeth against the pain lancing through her. The rival family sent a tactical team into a home full of children. They need to understand what that decision costs them. He studied her for a moment, then sighed the deep sigh of someone who has recognized an argument they cannot win. "You're exactly as stubborn as your husband described. Fine, but I'm wrapping that wound twice over. And you're wearing protective underlayers under whatever you're planning to put on. It won't stop a high-powered rifle, but it might stop a blade." 2 hours later, she stood in front of a mirror in the safe house's makeshift room, and barely recognized the woman looking back at her. The red dress was psychological warfare-made fabric, crimson silk that fit perfectly, with a high neck that covered the bandaging, long sleeves hiding the Roman 4 marks and the fresh evidence of what had happened. The skirt ending above her knees, modest enough to look professional, cut to allow movement if violence became necessary. Black heels added 3 inches, because she had always apparently believed in fighting in expensive shoes. Her hair, usually worn loose, had been arranged into something sleek and severe, makeup dramatic and precise. A mask that said, "I am not what you're hunting, I am what hunts," She looked like a queen preparing for war. The door opened and he walked in. He stopped dead when he saw her. He had changed too. A three-piece black suit that fit the way his suits always fit, like it had been constructed specifically for his body. His hair styled back, every bit the man his world feared, but his eyes when they found hers held something beyond appreciation. Something closer to reverence. "You should be resting," he said, his voice rough. "I should be dead," she replied. She turned from the mirror. The rival family made their move. "Now I make mine. Mia, don't." She walked toward him, the sound of her heels precise on the worn floor. "Don't tell me to rest. Don't tell me to let you handle this alone. I'm the one they tried to kill. I'm the one whose son was used as leverage. This ends tonight with me present. You can barely stand. I can stand long enough to watch them kneel." His jaw worked. "The council meeting is in 1 hour. Neutral ground downtown. Every major family will have representation. If you walk in there with wounds showing, they'll rate it as weakness. If I walk in there at all," she said, "they'll rate it as resurrection." She touched his face, feeling the tension she was causing in every line of his jaw. "They thought they eliminated the ghost 3 years ago when I erased myself. Thought they could use what I left behind to control you. Control everything, but I am not gone. I am not hiding. And tonight they learn what it actually costs to make someone like me angry. What's the plan? The truth?" She moved to the table where the evidence had been laid out. The drive, printed documents, a tablet loaded with recordings. All of it, every ugly secret about the original betrayal, the rival family's involvement, the council's own corruption. "I'm going to burn it all down. They'll end you for that. The moment you walk out of that meeting, every contractor they have will have your face. Then you'll need to make sure none of them ever get the chance to act on it." She gathered the materials and slipped them into a leather portfolio that looked professional but had been reinforced inside. "I'm not the woman who stumbled into that bar a week ago. She was terrified and hunted and barely holding together. That woman was a shadow of a shadow, but the real one is awake now, and she is very, very angry." He pulled her into his arms carefully, mindful of every wound, and pressed his forehead to hers. "I wish you would let me do this for you. I wish you would just be safe." "Safe is boring." She kissed him, tasting both his fear and his pride. "And I didn't marry you to be safe. I married you to be dangerous alongside you." The council meetings venue occupied the top floors of a downtown skyscraper. Approaching it felt like walking into a temple built for expensive sins. The interior was all dark marble and gold fixtures, screaming old money and older violence. His people flanked them, moving with the coordination of people who had done this many times. "Last chance to turn around," he murmured as they rode up. "Not even if something divine asked me nicely." The doors opened into a space that looked like luxury had been armored. Seating areas, low lighting, expensive art on the walls, but every window was reinforced, every staff member armed. A man in an expensive suit approached, late 50s, eyes that looked friendly until you saw what was actually behind them. "The council wasn't expecting you to bring your wife. The council doesn't govern my movements," he said. His voice perfectly cold. "She has information relevant to tonight's discussion." The man's gaze moved to her. She let him look. Let him see the red dress and the heels and the leather portfolio. Let him wonder what kind of woman walks into a meeting like this less than 2 days after taking a bullet. "The ghost," the man said, recognition moving across his face. "We believed you were dead." "Myths don't bleed," she said. She smiled, and it was the smile she had apparently always had for moments like this. All edges, all certainty. "But I'm happy to demonstrate that I'm entirely real if that helps clarify things." He gestured toward the main doors. There waiting, the council room was circular, a massive table at the center, high, backed chairs arranged all the way around. Most already occupied. She recognized faces from the files she had been studying, the heads of every major operation on the coast. They all turned when the doors opened. "This is a closed meeting," one woman said, her voice wrapped in false warmth. "The kind of beauty that came from money and artifice. Wives aren't part of the agenda." Wives aren't, she replied, moving to the center of the table and setting down her portfolio with deliberate care. But creditors are, and you all owe me a debt you've been trying to eliminate instead of pay. Silence. Complete and dangerous. 3 years ago, she continued, her voice clear and steady despite the fire building in her chest, I stole evidence that proved a senior member was betraying everyone in this room. I disappeared to protect my husband from having to execute his own blood. But while I was gone, you all picked the remains clean, used my sacrifice as leverage, treated the woman your colleague loved as though she were already dead. We don't know what you're referring to, the woman in the expensive suit said, but her voice had gone brittle. Don't you? She opened the portfolio, began laying out documents one by one, bank transfers, recorded conversations, photographs of meetings that never officially happened. The room had gone completely still. You see, she said softly, the ghost didn't just steal evidence of one man's failure. She stole evidence of systemic corruption. A council that speaks about loyalty and tradition while selling its own people out for money. And she kept it hidden for 3 years. An option of last resort, in case she ever needed leverage she could actually use. This is a bluff, the woman in the suit said, rising to her feet. You have nothing that can actually. She pressed play on the tablet. The woman's own voice filled the room. Crystal clear, telling someone to eliminate the girl, to make it look like an accident, saying that once she was gone, they could pressure her husband into whatever terms they wanted. He'd be too broken to fight back. The date stamp on the recording was 2 weeks after she had disappeared. While he had been dismantling his world looking for her, his own supposed allies had been planning her murder. Still a bluff, the woman's face had gone white as paper. Around the table others shifted, calculating damage. What do you want? The oldest man at the table asked. Money, territory, name your price. I don't want money. She gathered the documents. I want accountability. I want her, she pointed to the woman in the suit, removed from this council effective immediately. Her operations absorbed by us as direct reparation for attempted assassination. I want the heir agreement dissolved. My children, current and future, are my business and my husband's. This council has no claim on our family. I want formal acknowledgement that I have equal standing in our organization. My decisions carry the same weight as his. My word is his word. I want every outstanding contract on my life canceled. Any contractor who attempts to collect forfeits their life and their organization's protection. And I want what I'm calling the Prometheus Protocol. The evidence stays sealed behind a fail, safe. If anything happens to me, my husband, or our son, everything goes public automatically. The FBI gets it. Every relevant international authority gets it. And about 40 journalists get it, who would love nothing more than a career, defining story about this entire network. She set the tablet down, met each pair of eyes in turn. Those are my terms, non-negotiable. You have 60 seconds to vote. The room broke into chaos. The suited woman screaming about precedent, others arguing, one man laughing with what sounded like genuine admiration at the audacity of it all. And then he stood. The room went silent. My wife has spoken, he said quietly. I stand with her, every demand, every term. If the council refuses, our organization withdraws entirely from this structure. We take our territories and our resources and our evidence. And we build something new on whatever remains. His hand found hers, squeezed gently. You made a mistake when you thought you could control me through her. You made a bigger one when you tried to eliminate her instead of accepting her partnership. Don't make a third one by underestimating her now. The oldest man looked around the table, reading every face with the precision of someone who had been doing this for decades. Then he sighed, all in favor of accepting the proposed terms. 7 hands rose, grudging, some angry, but raised, opposed, the suited woman and 3 others who remained loyal to her. The motion passes. He looked at her with something that approached actual respect. Welcome to the table, Mrs. Kim. Try not to set it on fire on your first day. No promises, she said. She gathered her portfolio. the victory settling into her bones like armor being properly fitted for the first time. "It's been a pleasure, gentlemen. And you," she said, looking directly at the woman being removed. "You have 24 hours. They turned to leave, his arms steady around her waist because the adrenaline was fading, and the pain was making itself very much known again. Their people fell into formation around them. Behind her, she heard the woman's final declaration. "This isn't over. You think you've won, but the ghost has made enemies tonight she will never be free of." She paused at the door, looked back over her shoulder. "Making enemies is what I do." The elevator doors closed, and only when they were alone, just the two of them in that descending glass and steel box, did she allow herself to finally collapse against him. "I did it," she whispered into his chest. "I walked in there wounded and terrified, and I made them agree." "You were magnificent." His lips found her forehead, her temple, her cheek. "You were a queen, my queen." "Our son," she said, pushing through the pain that was becoming genuinely difficult to ignore. "I need to see him." "He's safe at the primary residence. One of our people's family is with him. She used to teach young children before she married into this life. He's been fed and cleaned up and read 3 stories about dinosaurs." "Dinosaurs?" She laughed and it hurt. But it was completely real. "Our son likes dinosaurs. He likes you more." His voice went thick with emotion. "When they showed him a picture of you and told him his mama was coming home soon, he fell asleep holding it in both hands. You're his whole world, Mia, even with everything, even with barely any time together." "Blood knows blood," she repeated, remembering the doctor's words. "Some bonds exist below memory and reason." "Then let's go home," he said. "Let's go be a family." The penthouse had been transformed. The spare, masculine space she had first walked in, too, was now scattered with the beautiful chaos of a small child's presence. Toys in the living area, a small table with tiny chairs, colorful things on the walls that hadn't been there before, and sitting on the floor, building a tower of blocks with absolute concentration, was her son. He looked up the moment they came through the door. And his face, that serious little face with his father's gravity behind his eyes, lit up with pure, uncomplicated joy. "Mama," he abandoned his blocks and ran on small, uncertain legs. She dropped to her knees despite every screaming nerve ending in her chest and caught him, gathered her son into her arms, held him the way she had been dreaming of holding him since the moment she learned he existed. "I'm here," she whispered into his dark, soft hair. "Mama is here, and I'm never going anywhere again." "You were sick," he said seriously. "The family we left you with said you were sick." He patted her face with both hands, checking her. "I was," she said. "But I'm better now, and I brought you home. This is where we live. You, me, and your father." She looked up at him, who crouched down beside them both. She gestured toward him. "Do you remember your father?" The boy turned and studied him with that ancient, searching gaze. Then held out his arms wordlessly, asking to be held. He took their son, held him against his chest, and when he looked at her over the boy's head, tears were moving down his face openly. "Our family," he said quietly. She stood and wrapped both arms around them, around her husband and her son, around the life she had been willing to erase herself to protect, around the love that had survived memory loss and 3 years of distance and violence and all the rest of it. "The ghost died 3 years ago," she said softly, "but she is just getting started now." And for the first time since she had stumbled through that heavy wooden door into that bar, the world felt exactly right. 6 months later, the first snow fell on the city like something forgiving had arrived. She stood at the windows watching the flakes turn everything clean and new. Behind her, she could hear her son's laughter as his father chased him through the living area, both of them playing some game involving dramatic dinosaur noises and theatrical falls. Her son was 3 now. His birthday had been last month, celebrated with far too much cake and gifts from men who were actually senior members of a criminal organization, but who showed up in good clothes and looked slightly terrified of disappointing a toddler. He had grown 3 inches, learned to speak in full, complete sentences. developed his father's particular talent for making demands sound like polite suggestions. He had nightmares sometimes, dreams from the time before, when he had been moved from place to place without understanding why. But he was healing. They all were Mama. He came running to her and wrapped small arms around her legs. Father says we can go to the park if the snow stops. Can we go? Can we please? She lifted him, settling him on her hip. He was getting heavy in the best possible way. If your father says so, but you have to wear your coat and your mittens, and my dinosaur hat, he said with great urgency. The one with the spikes, especially the dinosaur hat, she confirmed. He bounced with total delight. His father appeared behind them, arms wrapping around them both, the dragon on his neck pressed against her shoulder. She still traced it sometimes at night, still finding new things to notice in the detail she had once apparently spent weeks putting there. How are you feeling? His hand drifted carefully to her lower abdomen, pressing gently against the small curve that was barely showing yet under her sweater. Nauseous, she said, tired, craving kimchi at 3 a.m. She leaned back against his chest. So, thoroughly pregnant, definitely pregnant. They had waited 6 months before trying. 6 months of actual healing and finding their footing as parents to the boy they had already. 6 months of rebuilding the kind of trust that made both of them willing to be fully seen. And then, one night, he had looked at her and simply asked if she was ready. She had said yes, not because of a council agreement that no longer existed, not because of any external expectation, because she wanted to, because she wanted to watch this man be a father again, with full presence this time, because her son asked almost every single day if he could please have someone to teach things to, because she was finally, actually ready to make something beautiful from everything they had survived together. Boy or girl, what do you think? His voice was warm and rumbling against her back. Does it matter? Not even slightly. He kissed her temple. As long as they're healthy, as long as you're both healthy. I saw the doctor yesterday, she said. 12 weeks, due in early summer. Before you ask, no, I'm not stopping work. I wasn't going to suggest that, but his face absolutely suggested that. I've spent 6 months reforming the operations we took over, she said, redirecting resources away from the most harmful activities toward things that actually help people. I'm not stopping because I'm growing a person. His hands tightened around her. Fair. She managed her portion of things from the penthouse now, mostly. The council meetings happened here on their territory. Every major conversation happened where they controlled the environment. It had taken 6 months of careful, strategic work, but the organization was cleaner than it had ever been under the previous structure. Not perfect. This life would never be something she could casually describe to someone who didn't already understand what it meant. But it was theirs, and they were making it count for something real. The council meeting is in 2 hours, he reminded her. Are you sure you're up for it? I'm pregnant, she said. Not made of glass. Fair, he said again, and this time he actually meant it. She turned in his arms carefully, not wanting to jostle the boy who had started to doze against her shoulder. He took their son without being asked, cradling him the way he did everything involving the boy, with complete and total attention. The promotion for one of their most loyal people needs to be formally ratified, she said, and I have the new proposal about rerouting some of the northern operations. You are genuinely terrifying when you talk operations, and you love every bit of it. I really do. He kissed her again, deeper, and she felt the warmth of it everywhere. After, she said against his lips, after the meeting, after he is asleep, I'll show you exactly how terrifying I can be when I'm not running a criminal organization from a conference table. The meeting went exactly as it needed to. The promotion was ratified without objection. The operational proposal was debated for exactly the right amount of time before being accepted with modifications that were actually improvements. And when she stood at the end and informed the assembled leadership that she was expecting, she did it the way she did everything now, without apology, without any indication that it changed a single calculation. "This changes nothing about my role or my authority," she said. And they believed her, because by now they had every reason to. Afterward, with the room cleared and the evening finally theirs, he led her back through the penthouse to the master bath. Drew the water himself, sat with her while she soaked, and the tension of the day finally, slowly left her body. "I keep thinking about her," she said quietly, "about the woman who decided the only way to save you was to erase herself." "She'd be proud," he said, cupping her face and turning her to look at him. "She'd see that it wasn't wasted. That we found each other anyway, that we're making something real. She wasn't wrong to love you," she said. "I know that now, completely." He kissed her, soft and careful, and then not careful at all. And they ended up in the bedroom eventually the way they usually did, trailing laughter and water. Later, wrapped up together in the dark, she traced the dragon on his neck the way she had been doing since the night she first remembered what it meant, thinking about everything they had survived to arrive at exactly this. A door creaked. Small footsteps padded across the room. "Mama," her son said from the doorway, clutching his stuffed animal. "I had a bad dream. Come here," she said immediately, holding out her arm. He climbed into the bed and wedged himself between them, with the absolute confidence of a child who had been loved into certainty. "We've got you," she said. "Both of us always," he confirmed, his arm coming over all of them. "You're a family, little one. Nothing changes that, even when the new person comes." "Can I teach them about dinosaurs?" the boy asked, already half asleep again. "You can teach them everything you know," she said into his hair. He settled, satisfied, and went under fast the way children do. She and her husband looked at each other over the sleeping boy's head, and shared the kind of smile that didn't need any words around it. This was the life, not clean, not the kind of thing you explain at a school event, but real, and theirs. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering the city in something that looked like a second chance. And inside that glass tower, wrapped around the people she had fought to come back to, the woman who had once erased herself smiled into the dark. The ghost was done haunting. She had found something worth staying for. 6 more months passed. The rain came back the way it always did. But this time she stood in the bar by choice. The heavy wooden door opened, and a woman stumbled through, soaked through and terrified, running from something she could feel but couldn't name. She knew that expression, had worn it herself not so long ago. The woman saw her standing at the bar, saw her son playing quietly nearby, saw her hand resting on the curve of her pregnant belly, saw him emerge from the back, moving toward her with that particular ease. "Please," the woman gasped. "Someone is following me. I didn't know where else to go." "You're safe now," she said, her voice warm and certain. "In here, we protect the people who need it. Sit down. Tell us what's happening." His hand found her shoulder from behind. "Solid and present, we help those who can't help themselves," he said. "That's what we do here." The woman looked between them. This strange and dangerous couple in their fortress that had learned to be a home, and burst into tears of pure relief. She nodded to their people to secure the door, nodded to him, who was already moving to pour something warm. And she waited, because this was who they had become, not just survivors, not just people who had clawed their way back to each other, but something more purposeful than that. The ghost was done being a ghost. She had become something else entirely. And her reign, their reign, had only just begun.